The first thing I learned about this world was the taste of boiled lizard, not roasted, boiled, in water that had clearly been used for something else first, judging by the color. I was 5 days into being dead, flat on a plank bed in a shed with more gaps than wall, and a kid was spooning gray lizard broth into me out of a dented metal lunchbox like it was medicine. Which, honestly, it was. Everything you need to know about where I landed: the soil is dead, the water is poison. It rains acid roughly twice a month, and people run outside to stand in it because that is the only shower anybody gets. The sun turns up occasionally like a guy who owes you money, and I had no papers. In this world, that means the camp beats you to death or works you to death, and they generously let you pick. The kid feeding me was called Xiaolin. She looked like a boy, which was the point. Charcoal smeared across her face, a rag tied down over her head, clothes that were more whole than cloth. She had dragged a full-grown unconscious man in off the wasteland and hidden him under her own roof, which in this place is roughly like smuggling a live tiger through customs in your jacket. "I caught 8 today," she said, and her whole face lit up. "With your stone trap, 8! That's several times more than I've ever caught. Lizards." She was talking about lizards. That was the currency. Here's how the camp worked. Every 3 days you handed in a quota of food, or you stopped being a resident. And stopping being a resident out here is a slow, boring way to die. Her quota was 40 lizards. She'd handed in 35, and she was 30 short on the other quota. Mine. "You're not registered," she said, in the same tone you'd use to explain a bus timetable. "So I have to pay yours too. It's fine. 22 traps out today. Tomorrow, I'll set 30. Then she pushed 8 dried lizards across the bed at me. Her entire day's work, her margin, her everything. I did not take them. "I'm an adult," I told her. "Adults pay a different tax." She didn't get the joke. She wouldn't get it for a while. I should probably explain who I was before the ground ate me. Orphan, 5 years in special forces, retired early on a knee that never forgave me. My grand plan for the rest of my life was wilderness survival videos: build a shelter, eat a bug, get 11 views. Then an earthquake opened a crack in the ground, and I went into it. And instead of dying at the bottom, I woke up here, coughing dust, with a kid checking my pulse. So, my career pivoted, slightly. The next morning, she handed me back my backpack, untouched, every strap still done up the way I do them, and I check. "I'll give it all back," she said. And then she said the actual sentence, the one she'd been building up to for 5 days. "Please stay." Because 4 years ago, her sister walked out of this camp to go pay taxes somewhere else and told her to wait. And she'd been waiting, alone, for 4 years, in a shed. Then she got down on her knees, reached under the bed, and came up with a turtle. It was the size of my palm. Her sister had brought it home to eat the insects in the walls. In trade, it was worth about 10 lizards, and she was offering it to me like a girl handing over the last thing in the house with any value on it, because it was. And in the back of my skull, something said, "Tameable creature detected." I want to be clear that my first reaction was not wonder. My first reaction was that I had finally cracked, and my brain had chosen the worst possible moment to start narrating. But it kept talking. God-level tamer system. A higher dimensional training AI that got caught in some space-time turbulence, fell through the same crack I did, and fused with me on the way down. Which sounds like a lot until you realize what it actually meant. It could tame animals, it could evolve them if I paid. And every time one of them leveled up, one of its talents came back down the wire into me. Then it showed me my numbers, which was the genuinely humbling part. Average human sits at 1 across the board. Me, retired professional soldier. Stamina 3, speed 2.6, strength 3.2, spirit 2.7. Lifespan 24 out of 79. Congratulations. You are marginally better than average and you're already a third dead. Taming costs 10 points a day, which I got for free, so I had exactly 1 shot, and I spent it on a turtle the size of a coaster. It swelled. That's the only word for it. It went from palm size to over a meter in about 4 seconds. Shell going dark brown and lumpy with rock, head coming out ugly and blunt and frankly a little smug. Rock armor turtle. Level 1. Shaolin came through the door holding a bone spur like a knife, white to the lips, absolutely prepared to stab a monster in her own bedroom. "If it turns into a ferocious beast," she said, "we all die." Fair. So, I lied. In this world, there are 3 ways to stop being ordinary. Awakeners, roughly 1 in 10,000, who get an elemental power. Mutants, 1 in 1,000, who get a body part. And enhancers, who buy their strength out of a bottle. I told her I was an awakener. It was the smallest lie available, and it lasted about 8 months. Then my turtle's talent came back down the line into me, Earthrock Thrust. And I raised a spike of stone out of the floor of a shed with my hand. 6 casts before my stamina died. I budgeted 3 because the difference between a professional and an amateur is that the amateur finds out where the limit is by hitting it. My numbers doubled. Lifespan went from 24 out of 79 to 24 out of 100. And somewhere in the back of my head, entirely unprompted, I thought, keep evolving this thing and you don't get a turtle. You get Xuanwu, the black tortoise of the north, the one that's a mountain with a shell. Yeah, I know. Give me a break. I'd been awake for 5 days. I leave in 2 days, I told her. Breakfast the next morning was compressed ration biscuits from my pack and lizard porridge in her lunchbox. The metal one. The one she'd never been able to bring herself to trade even when it was that or eat. I asked her to give me an answer in 2 days about whether she was coming. I headed north into the Rocky Hills, named my turtle on the way. Little black tortoise, not creative, extremely accurate. Behind me I heard her say to nobody, "Why am I so irritable today?" My hearing was a lot better than it used to be. I heard it perfectly. I didn't go back and comfort her, because she needed to work that one out herself, and because I am, at my core, a bit of a coward about crying. Out in the rocks, I killed a lizard for lunch and caught a second one that changed colors when it panicked. Tamed it. Tricolor lizard, level 1, talent. Mimicry. Color change, which bends light around you so completely that you vanish, right up until you move, at which point you're a shimmering idiot. Assassin's Creed. Lizard, I named it that in my head, and I stand by it. Then I heard running. Shaolin sprinting flat out through the rocks, and her head rag was gone. 2 long blue rabbit ears standing straight up out of pale blue hair. Behind her, 4 men with bone knives and wooden spears, screaming the most reliable sentence in the wasteland. "How dare you steal our prey!" I let her run past me. The 4th man got a hand under his chin, and the rest of himself introduced to a rock, and his neck went in under 2 seconds. The 3rd man got the same trick before the 2nd one had finished turning around. Number 2 took an elbow through the sternum and sat down to cough about it. Xiaolin kicked the 4th one in the leg, which was not necessary, but she'd had a day. The last one begged, and in begging he handed me the entire plot. I had never heard the name. I have heard nothing else since. I'm one of Iron Fang's men. Iron Fang, bandit chief, 500 plus. Robs camps, robs roads, robs the people who rob roads. And these 4 were scouts, sizing up a target for an attack in the next 3 days. The target was the camp, 300 people, half of them women, children, and old men. Their entire military was a hunting team, with wooden spears. I put the bone knife under his chin. I'll ask once. He answered everything. It didn't help him. I'm not going to dress that up. He was on a scouting run for a massacre, and I had a 14-year-old standing behind me who thought 8 lizards was a good day. The loot was 4 sets of jerky so bad, it was almost an insult. Then Xiaolin dug through a pouch and came up with something small, white, and prismatic, about the size of a thumb. Beast crystal. The system ate it and told me it was worth 100 evolution points. And that's the moment the whole thing stopped being survival and started being a business. Because here were the numbers. Level 1 to 2 costs, 10 points. 2 to 3 costs, 100. 3 to 4, 1,000. Times 10, every tier, forever. Which means beast crystals are fuel. Which means everything in this world that can be killed is also a fuel tank. I pushed my lizard to level 2. It went to a full meter, and the next man who tried to ambush us in the rocks got taken apart before he finished standing up, and put the rest into my turtle. And Xiaolin learned that when I'm thinking hard, I reach over and tug her rabbit ears. I'm not a pet. That would eventually become a whole thing between us. At this stage, it was just very funny. By evening, my turtle was the size of a decent room, 3 meters at the shoulder, and it did something I hadn't asked for. It retracted its spikes, raised a set of stone stairs out of the ground, and stood there waiting. The top of its shell was flat. 7 or 8 square meters of it, ringed all around with half-meter rock spikes like a fence. Xiaolin climbed up, turned around twice, and said the sentence that built everything I own. Wei Feng, could we build a house on Little Black Tortoise's back and live there? She was joking. I wasn't. That night, over lizard, I asked her a normal question and got an answer that stuck in me like a splinter. Are you full? She thought about it. Genuinely thought about it, chewing slowly, head tilted, like I'd asked her to describe a color she'd never seen. I don't know what counts as full. Right. Okay. Noted. Then I went to rob the camp, not for fun. I needed to know what was actually happening in there before I walked 300 people into a bandit raid. And the fastest way to learn what a place is really like is to walk through it while nobody knows you're there. The camp had 2 rings. The outer ring was everyone who paid tax. The inner ring was the chief and his hunting team behind a 2-meter fence of wood and stone. And inside that fence was the thing that actually ran the camp. Not the fence, not the spears, the water. There was one well, in one windowless room, with 1 guard on the door, and if you didn't pay your quota, you didn't get a ration. That's it. That's the whole system of government. 300 people obeyed a man with a stick because he owned the only wet thing for 50 kilometers. I went in invisible, which is a sentence I'd been waiting my entire adult life to say. Mimicry, color change, holds perfectly as long as you don't move, and shimmers like a heat mirage if you do. So I moved the way you move through a house at 3 in the morning when you're not supposed to be there, slowly, between other people's footsteps. I followed a maid to the main hall, and I got there in time to watch the chief drink water, with fresh rabbit blood dripped into it, for the taste. While outside his fence, a kid was doing arithmetic on lizards to keep a stranger alive. Inside the hall, 3 hunting team captains were arguing with him, and the argument was this. The well had 10 days of water left. 10. They wanted to move everyone to the Yuetan tribe, a real tribe, 10,000 people, 5 or 6 days' walk. The chief said no. Not because of danger, because at Yuetan, he'd be a nobody. Here he was, a king of 300 starving people, and there he'd be a man in a queue. He gave them 5 days to shut up about it. Then he called in a man named Jian, and Jian reported that he'd waited all day on an agreed hilltop, and Iron Fang's people never showed, and the chief stood up so fast his chair went over and said the sentence that got him killed. Impossible. I personally negotiated with Iron Fang. Let me lay it out, because it took me a second too. The raid wasn't coming for him. The raid was his idea. The deal, Iron Fang's men come in, slaughter the outer ring, the disobedient ones, the ones who complain, the ones who take up water, and the chief, reluctantly, joins Iron Fang afterward with his hunting team intact and gets made a captain. Iron Fang gets manpower, supplies, and everything else that's left standing, his own people, all 300 of them, including the girl who was keeping me alive, sold as a package deal so he wouldn't have to queue somewhere. I made my decision about him in the 4 seconds after I heard it. He turned the table over and screamed at his captains that, if they still wanted Yuetan, they could all die instead. I was standing in the corner of that room the entire time. I gave him about 4 seconds, long enough to gag him with the towel off his own chair, then an arm around the throat. Welcome to hell. Then I robbed his house down to the walls. Iron, long knives, one genuinely beautiful longsword that had clearly never been swung at anything, and a wooden box with 7 beast crystals in it, 340 points, which brought me to 420. And I want you to appreciate that I was doing this math with a body cooling on the floor behind me, because you take your wins where you find them. There was a hidden compartment in the box. I nearly didn't check. Inside it were seeds, vegetable seeds, green ones. I sat on the floor of a dead man's house and held a handful of seeds and understood something about this world that I don't think the man who owned them ever did. Meat feeds a camp. Only plants ever built a civilization. Then the wardrobe, 5 rolls of fine cloth, and 1 whole wolf pelt, unused, still soft. Well, I said out loud to nobody. Now we don't even have to worry about blankets. I spent 100 points pushing my lizard to level 3 and got mimicry stealth, invisibility that holds while you move, with about a 1-second color lag that gets worse the faster you go. It also doubled in size, grew spikes on its head and a pair of vertical brown pupils, and looked at me with an expression I can only describe as employable. I loaded it like a pack mule and sent it home. Little Kai, if I ever give you wings, you're going as a dragon. In the food store, I found Jian, elbow deep in a sack, stuffing the good meat into it, while a maid stood in the doorway having a small, quiet breakdown. He'd never gone to that hilltop. He'd deliberately skipped the meeting, so the 2 sides would start suspecting each other, because a war between his chief and Iron Fang was the only way a man like him ever gets a promotion. And now the plan had come apart, and he was doing what men like that always do, which is leave. I took him from behind with a knife at his throat. If you obey, you live. Then, because timing is everything, your leader had his neck broken about 4 minutes after you left the room. He went very still. I also killed Iron Fang's scouts, I said. New ones arrive tomorrow. They'll find your chief dead in his own hall. What do you think Iron Fang is going to assume? You could hear him doing it, the whole calculation, running behind his eyes. I took the meat sack, payment for the information, and at the door, I gave him one more thing to carry. I'll be keeping an eye on you, you smart man. Then I sent the invisible lizard to tap him on the leg with 1 claw, so he'd know I meant it literally. The water room took a thrown stone down the corridor, 1 unconscious guard, and about a minute. The well was a 2-meter black hole, and the bucket came up more mud than water. 10 days was generous. I carried out 2 full barrels, 1 under each arm, like a man leaving a bakery. Behind me, Jian was working through it. If he ran alone, the mysterious person killed him. If the camp emptied, the mysterious person got what he wanted and had no reason to bother. Therefore the order, the actual order, the one nobody had given him, was evacuate everybody. He went and woke the hunting team captains. It concerns the lives of everyone in the camp. And then, to the dark, mysterious person. Who exactly are you? Back at the shed, Zhaolin had spent the evening smoking lizards and quietly losing her mind with worry until an invisible something shouldered the door open and dumped 5 rolls of cloth, a wolf pelt, and a bundle of swords onto her floor. Then it went away and came back with a sack of dried meat. I have this on good authority, which is that she told me about it later, at speed, without breathing. First I thought, maybe the chief gave you a reward. Then I thought, no chief has ever given anyone a reward. Then I thought, she stopped. Wei Feng must have gone to steal something. Then she pushed the sack under the bed with her foot. Give it back. Absolutely not. Are you insane? I came through the door with 2 barrels of water, and she hit her head on the bed frame getting up. You've emptied the chief's house. No, I said, putting the barrels down. There's still a lot in there that hasn't been moved over yet. Then I told her the chief was dead. And why? And watched a 14-year-old find out that the man taxing her lizards had sold her to bandits as part of a career move. She didn't cry. She just went quiet for a second, and then asked what we were going to do. So I told her the plan. Tomorrow the camp runs. The day after, Iron Fang's new scouts arrive and find a camp that was abandoned about 4 hours ago. Warm charcoal, open doors, everything valuable gone. They ride back and report. Iron Fang, who already thinks the chief played him, takes 500 men out to chase 300 refugees who left 3 days earlier. And while 500 bandits are out walking, their base is standing there with nobody in it. Shaolin stared at me. Wei Feng, are you crazy? It's no big deal if it fails. I shrugged. It just means we've wasted 2 more days. At dawn, the hunting team went down every row banging on doors. The Iron Fang are coming. We're going to Yue Tan, and the whole camp started packing like a kicked anthill. We had breakfast, dried meat, stewed into a soup. Shaolin got about 3 spoonfuls in and stopped, and her eyes went bright and wet. It's been so long, she said, since I've had meat soup. She ate the entire box. How does it feel to be full? Very comfortable. A pause, then guiltily. But it's too luxurious. That meal cost 10 small lizards. That was the price of the most comfortable she had ever been in her life, and she felt bad about it. I made her a deal on the spot. Take the headscarf off or lose ear-tugging privileges forever. She untied it. 2 blue rabbit ears came up into the light. I'm just letting them get some fresh air, she said with enormous dignity. This is not for you to touch. The turtle picked that morning to inform me it was hungry, not out loud. Through the link, which at that point in its development was less a language and more a feeling, and the feeling was empty. You can eat, I said. The system, helpfully, chose that exact moment to mention that a tame beast consumes 1 evolution point per day. You could have said that earlier? I wanted on record that an interdimensional artificial intelligence went wad at me. That happened. That's a thing that happened in my life. I put 100 points into it, and Little Black Tortoise went to level 3, and the talent that came back down the wire was Earthrock Burst Impale. Here's what that means in practice. I put my hand down. A meter of stone came up out of the ground, and then it left. It didn't rise, it didn't grind, it went like a shell out of a barrel, and a rock face 100 meters away stopped being a rock face. I had a ranged weapon. That changed the shape of every plan I'd made. My numbers went to 22, 21, 21, 32, spirit. Lifespan, 420 years. The turtle was now the size of a decent house, 6 meters tall, and Shaolin was standing at the bottom of it, looking up with her mouth open. So, I said, about that house. I'd drawn it at midnight on a scrap of cloth. 2 bedrooms, a hall, a bathroom, a small yard. Nothing fancy. A shape. Here's the part where I stopped being a survivalist and became a contractor. The turtle tore rectangular blocks out of the hillside, lifted them onto its own back, and then fused them. No cement, no rebar, no foundation, because the foundation was alive and walking. About 90% of the actual work of building a house just didn't apply to us. Zhaolin laid the walls. She was fast, and she was serious about it, tongue between her teeth, checking every course. I cut a window. Thieves might get in, she said. I looked at the window. Then I looked over the edge of a 6-meter shell at the ground below. What kind of thief? I said. Is climbing this? Toilet in the corner of the yard, drain going straight over the side, which I'm aware is not ideal, and which I'd like you to remember for later. Courtyard wall 1/2 meter high. And a gesture, my foot twice in a particular spot, that brought the stairs up out of the ground. We needed roof beams, and there was an entire abandoned village 50 meters away, so we went and demolished it. Zhaolin chose which houses. She went straight past the ones belonging to people who'd been kind to her, and walked directly up to the house of the family whose kids used to steal lizards out of her traps, and stood there for a second, and then said, this one. 14 years old. Absolute iron. We laid the roof. The turtle fused the tiles. It was rainproof, which as far as I could tell, made it the second most sophisticated structure in that entire region. Then she went to pack, and I found out how much she owned. a pillow, 2 bed planks, 2 wooden bowls, a bucket, and then she went outside and started unscrewing the door of the shed. I didn't ask, I helped. Her sister built that shed. She stood in the middle of the empty room for a while afterward, holding the pillow, and I didn't say anything because there is nothing you can say, and every man who tries makes it worse. We built a new hearth in the new hall with a chimney, and I started teaching her to read ground, how deep a footprint sits, how far down a piece of charcoal has burned, how cold the soil is under a dead fire. Basic stuff. The kind of thing that means the difference between meeting someone and being met by them. And I gave her the next target because a person needs one. Yue Tan tribe. 10,000 people. 5 or 6 days that way. Where a girl who left 4 years ago to pay taxes might, conceivably, have ended up. Her ears came up so fast I heard them. That night we walked back into the empty camp and stacked firewood in every single house. I'll explain why in a moment. In one of them, in a corner, thick with old web, I found a redback spider and tamed it. Red ghost spider. Black body, red claw tips, and on its back, I'm not making this up, this world does this on purpose, a red ghost face, like a mask, like someone painted it. Talent was spider silk perception, so I spent 110 points and took it straight to level 3, which upgraded it to spider silk manipulation, and that's when I learned the rule that governs my entire existence. Diminishing returns. The first beast of each tier gives you a real boost. Everyone after that is scraps. Which meant my strategy wasn't tame everything. It was tame everything, but push one of them up first, always. The silk was transparent, tougher than any rope I've ever trusted my body to. And this is the part that mattered. It feels. Weight comes back down the thread. Shape comes back. Something walks into a line of it 200 meters away, and I know how heavy it was and which way it was going. So I ring the entire camp in it. Don't capture them, I told my spider. Notify me. Shaolin watched a 2-meter spider nod at me. Spider-Man? She tried. I looked at the torch in my hand and let the idea die. The new scouts came in at dawn, 3 of them, cursing the 4 who never came back. All 3 tripped over an invisible line in the dark and spent about 10 minutes trying to find what did it. And then, they reported to each other, in the middle of the street, exactly what I'd built for them to find. Doors open. Anything worth taking is gone. The charcoal's still warm. They left before dawn. I had lit every one of those firewood piles at 3 in the morning and then gone home and slept 4 hours. 2 of them rode back to the boss. The 3rd started following the refugee trail, which was the one loose thread, so I sent my spider after him, and he went into the silk and stopped being a loose thread. The lizard shadowed the other 2 all the way home, which is how I got directions to a bandit fortress. Before we left, I gave Shaolin a job with a hook in it. Your sister might come back to an empty camp, I said. Leave her something. They'd had door codes as kids. Hers was long-eared rabbit. Her sister's was short-eared cat. She can't write, so she drew. I want to describe these drawings accurately. There was a long face with every single tooth showing, which was her. There was a cat person with 2 mismatched eyes, which was her sister. And there was a giant turtle with a grinning man standing on top of it, which I assume was meant to be flattering. I drew a proper one underneath, charcoal, the camp, the hills behind it, and titled it Hometown. And while I was drawing it, I was thinking the thing I never said to her, which is 4 years. Nobody comes back after 4 years. But she needed something to wait for, and I could afford to give her one. We buried the box under the floor of the shed and tied it to a stone with spider silk, and then I carved the stone into the shape of a rabbit-eared girl and set it face up in the middle of the empty room, so that whoever picked it up would drag the box out of the ground with it. I've used that exact setup before, in a previous career, with something considerably less friendly in the box. The spider came back and reported the 3rd scout had stopped moving. We rolled out toward Iron Fang's base, following an invisible lizard. I'd left half a day late on purpose, so our column and the refugee column would never lay eyes on each other. Water was getting thin, so I asked a question. When was the last time you took a shower? 17 days ago. Perfectly cheerful. There was an acid rain, so I went outside and stood in it. In your clothes. Of course in my clothes. Acid rain, incidentally, is not drinkable. A man on the hunting team drank some once and went at people with a knife until they stopped him. Can you not smell the sour stench coming off you? She stormed into her room. 3 seconds of silence. And then, through the wall, at volume, damn it! Why do I smell so bad? I built her a table, 4 benches, and a bathtub big enough to lie down in one afternoon, using stone tools and a turtle. She nearly bit her tongue off. Then I handed her the finished painting of her hometown, and her eyes went out of focus and she had to look at the floor for a while. That night, the wolves started. Moonwolf howls, rolling in from the dark, and Shaolin dragged me inside by the sleeve and smothered the fire with a blanket and put her back against the door. Then, Little Black Tortoise raised its head and roared once. The wolves answered, the wolves moved off. I asked what she thought was said. He said, "Get out of my territory," she said. And then, after a moment, they said, "Just you wait." The rain came 2 days later. I had resloped the whole yard so every drop ran into tubs, built 3 more tubs, and caulked every gap with spider silk. Then the sky opened. Little black tortoise pulled its head and all 4 legs in and became briefly a very large rock with a house on it. I split the bathroom roof down the middle so Shaolin could shower in the rain with walls around her, and washed in the yard myself like a savage. And out of the looted cloth, with a bone needle and spider silk for thread, I made her a sleeveless robe. Clean, for the first time since I'd met her, she turned out to be somebody else entirely. Fair skin, big blue eyes, pale blue hair down to her waist, 2 blue rabbit ears. She'd been wearing 3 years of grime as camouflage, and it had worked. Now, let's talk about the man I was going to rob. Iron Fang, 1 meter 90, roughly the width of 2 normal people, with a beard so red and so dense it swallowed his neck whole. Red hair. And here's the thing that made him dangerous, which nobody ever noticed until it was late. Under all that theater, he was meticulous. I got all of this from a rock ledge with my chin in the dust. His standing order to 500 men delivered flat. Nobody drinks rainwater. If you go insane, don't blame my knife. 200 of them were camped under a sloping rock face when one of his 4 captains, Shadowhound, jackal-headed mutant, ambitious in the way that gets people killed, asked to take the little camp himself, with a small squad, for the glory. Iron Fang said no. And then he explained why, which was a mistake, because I was lying on a rock 40 meters above him, listening to every word of it. Back when he had 1,000 men, he sent a captain out alone on a job. The captain came back with nothing and left again with 400 of his men. Since that day, he personally leads anything over 200. He doesn't hold that army with loyalty. He holds it with water and food, because he owns both. And the day he stops owning them, the army becomes 500 individual problems. Then somebody screamed because my spider was sitting on the wall above them. A 2-meter spider with a ghost face painted on its back, hanging on the rock wall above them, watching. Shadowhound grabbed a stone. Iron Fang caught his wrist. "That spider's a bit strange, don't touch it." They looked again, and it was gone. I worked out the bandit column was 1 hill over, which meant it was time. Jolene asked to come. Naturally. I demonstrated the invisibility instead. She grabbed at empty air with both hands, and I caught her wrist out of nowhere, and she made a noise I describe as a kettle. And then I gave her real work, because "stay here" is an insult, and "here's your job" isn't. Sew clothes, measure first, mark the cloth, sew it inside out. Bone needle, silk for thread. She nodded, deadly serious. "We also need shorts," I said. "Don't ask why." Door code, 1 long knock, 2 short. "I'll wait up," she said. "When you come back, only then will I dare to sleep." At the edge of the Bandit Valley, a stone landed at my feet. Not thrown at me, thrown in front of me, which is a different sentence entirely. There was a figure on the rocks above, hooded, cloaked, and the voice that came out of it was female and cool as a cellar. She assumed I was a bounty hunter working the Yuetan tribe contract. She proposed a partnership. She had a map. And in about 4 sentences of pitch, she handed me 2 things I didn't know existed. 1, Iron Fang has a treasure vault. 2, something called a crystal fish. I said no because I don't work with people whose faces I haven't seen. "I'm afraid you'd be frightened," she said. "Then we're done." She gave me the valley layout anyway, for free, as an apology. 3 hills in a crescent, the middle one 150 meters, and then intended to follow me in and watch. She lost me in under a minute. She told me later that what unsettled her wasn't losing sight of me. It was going back and finding no footprints. "Perhaps," she said to herself, "he really can get into Iron Fang's treasure vault." Here's the front door I was supposed to use. 2 gate checks, 20+ armed men each, and a suspension bridge with sentries. Here's the door I used instead. 150 meters of vertical rock in the dark, on spider silk. 30 stories, straight up, with a 4-meter lizard and a 2-meter spider climbing behind me, 2 hidden sentries on the way. Neither of them made a sound, which I mention only because they were on the payroll of a man who was extremely careful about everything except the sky. At the top, there was a big wooden dome, and an argument coming out of it. "My father is out, and I'm in charge here now." That was Crimson Edge, Iron Fang's son. He was refusing entry to his father's own men who wanted to go in and get water, which told me everything. If the boss won't let his own son through that door, whatever's behind it is the whole reason the boss exists. There was a 10-meter gap in the dome, about 10 inches wide. I sent my spider through first, then dropped in on a thread. The entire hilltop was hollow, a 10-meter high hall carved out of the inside of a mountain. And the dome wasn't a roof at all. It was a lid, on gears and ropes, that could be cranked open. Why? Because of the garden, green plants, the first ones I'd seen in 9 days, cabbage in rows, tomatoes on a rack, A low tree I didn't recognize with tiny green lights in the leaves, and a few others, some of them dying. I picked a leaf and smelled it and said, out loud, to nobody, in an empty room, in another world, "It really is cabbage." And the system said, plants can be tamed too. Iron Fang's bedroom wasn't even locked. Why would it be? Who climbs a cliff? Bedside drawer, a cloth bag of beast crystals. System, absorb all of it. 3,866 evolution points. Also in there, a box of 7 or 8 kinds of seeds, a handful of gemstones, which I pocketed on the grounds that Shaolin would enjoy them. 15 rolls of cloth in 8 colors. They all collect these and never wear them. Let me help them get dressed. And about a dozen swords and spears. Then I knocked on a wall and it knocked back hollow. Behind it, a study. Animal hides, floor to ceiling, covered in plant diagrams and written recipes. In oracle bone script. I stood in a hidden room in a hollow mountain, holding a hide covered in writing that on Earth is 3,500 years old, in a world that also has cabbage and tomatoes. And I had a thought I have not been able to put down since. How old is this place, and what exactly is it? The second room had 100 water barrels in it. 99 of them were ordinary. One was 1.5 meters tall with stones piled on the lid. I lifted it a crack, and water came out of it like something had kicked it, and a shape went straight up into the air, so I caught it, mid-air, with 5 fingers of silk, a fish. Transparent, gold, shaped like an arowana, with bones inside it like dark crystal. It panicked, and when it panicked, it condensed a sphere of water around itself the size of a soccer ball, and that sphere just hung there. I shook the net. The water didn't fall. That was where 500 bandits got their drinking water, and that was why a tribe of 10,000 people had put a bounty on it. I put it in a small bucket and stuck it under my arm. Third room, dried meat, stacked. Enough to feed 1,000 people for a month. The problem was that the gap in the dome was 10 inches wide, my lizard wouldn't fit through it, and opening the lid would be heard by everyone in the valley. And then I realized I was solving the wrong problem, because I wasn't leaving through the front gate either way. So I stopped being quiet. I blocked the trapdoor with a pile of stone and got to work. 1,000 points each. Red ghost spider to level 4, 100 silk. Manipulation, 100 threads at once, 2 meters of body. The ghost face on its back gone from unsettling to actively rude. 8 legs turned solid red and pointed like spears. Tricolor lizard to level 4, mimicry plus scale hardening. Still invisible, and now it can armor itself and hit like a truck in the same motion. 4 meters long, tricolored pyramid scales, and it squeezed itself through a 10-inch gap and left a trail of its own scales doing it. You really go all out. My numbers, 34, 33, 34, 45 spirit, lifespan 560, 1,972 points left. I hardened my forearm and watched tricolored lines crawl up it like circuitry, and when I knocked it against the stone floor, it rang like a hammer. Then I packed a robbery. Hardened fingers dig faster than a shovel. Every plant went up out of the soil root ball intact and into barrels, silk over the lids. 12 barrels lashed onto my lizard in a stack 3 high. The tomato vines were too brittle to transplant, so my spider spun the entire plant, rack and all, into one enormous white cocoon in about 10 minutes. And then I took a spear and pried the dome lid open, on purpose, loudly. Outside, at the sealed door, the guards finally got it. Someone's inside. Go tell Crimson Edge. Someone has entered the boss's cultivation room. I lowered 2,000 kilos of meat down a cliff on silk lines and sent my lizard home with the first load. Crimson Edge arrived and started screaming, "Break down the door, right now! I want to see who has the audacity." That door plus a pile of stone was 3 hours minimum. So I broke up the furniture for firewood and grilled meat inside his father's vault. You have to understand what that smell did. It went through the door. And on the other side of it, 5 or 6 men swinging a beam at a barricade started slowing down and looking at each other because they were hungry and because somebody in there was cooking. Crimson Edge offered a bucket of water to whoever broke through first. That got them going again, briefly. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the cliff, the woman in the hood was watching a 2-meter ghost-faced spider lower white cocoons down a rock face on ropes, and having a complicated evening. She nearly screamed. Then she looked at the ropes again and realized what she was actually looking at, a ladder. It took her 10 minutes to climb 150 meters. At the top, she found an impossible smashed open hole in a sealed dome, and through it, unmistakably, the smell of roasting meat. She had been lying in ambush outside that valley for 10 days on dried scraps. She knocked an arrow, fully expecting Crimson Edge, and came through the gap ready to shoot. I was sitting on a crate turning a skewer. "Oh," I said, "you're up here too." Her target wasn't my fish. Hers was a flower. "A flower with wings," she said. And I knew exactly which one she meant because I dug it up myself 2 hours earlier, half dead. and it was already on a lizard headed for my house. I told her I had it. I told her I'd trade. I did not tell her the price was her hood, but she worked it out. "You'll be scared," she said. "People have been scared of me before too. Quite a few people," she said, "have already been frightened by me." Then she pulled it back. Snow white hair to her waist, silver white eyes, very fair skin, and under her right eye, running down her cheek and into her collar, crimson lines. Not scars, not tattoos. Lines like circuitry, like something growing through her. Void ghost infection. I looked at it for a couple of seconds, and what came out of my mouth was, "Your pattern's only slightly worse than mine in terms of color, but it's still pretty cool." She stood there. Then she stared into my eyes for a long time, hunting for the lie, checking every corner of my face for the flinch. She didn't find one, because there wasn't one. I've seen worse things on better people. Her name was Maylin. She had to come home with me, since her flower was already there. I loaded 15 rolls of cloth onto my lizard and widened the hole in the dome so it could get out. She watched me strip a warlord's private treasury down to the floorboards and said, mostly to herself, "I think he'll probably faint from anger." Then, just before we left, she ran back and grabbed a small bucket of water and a bag of dried meat. "What?" she said. "I just felt it would be a wasted trip if I didn't take anything." "Not bad," I said. "That's my style." We walked out of the Crescent Valley right under their noses, about 20 white cocoons at the cache, roughly 2,000 kilos of meat, which was less than a tenth of what had been in that room. A level 4 lizard hauls over a ton. The spider takes 500 pounds. Maylin carried the tomato cocoon and then asked whether she could carry a second one. She refused flatly to sleep at my house. An infected girl doesn't invite herself in. That's a rule she'd made for herself years ago, and she was not taking suggestions. Then we walked out into an empty rock field with nothing in it, and stone steps rose out of the ground. She looked at me. We went up. There was a house, with a lit hearth, on top of a turtle. The door banged open and Xiaolin came out at a dead run. "Wei Feng, are you all right? Are you hurt?" She checked me for wounds before she said hello. Both hands, sleeves, ribs, all the way round. Then she took the load off my arms without being asked. Maylene stood in the dark outside the light of the door, and was, for about a minute, completely forgotten, which I feel bad about to this day. Inside it was warm. There was water boiling, 2 people, clean, in decent clothes, with a hearth. And she looked down at her own filthy cloak and very nearly backed out the door. Xiaolin went stiff as a board the moment she saw a stranger. Maylin read that as disgust at the infection and turned her face away to hide the cheek. Both of them were wrong, and neither was going to say anything, so I split them up before it set. We filled the hall, meat cocoons in one corner, cloth in another, loot in the third, hearth in the fourth. "The house is still too small," I said. "It's not too small anymore," Xiaolin said, patting a stack of cloth like a woman counting her own gold. "It's just right now." Maylene's private assessment, which she told me weeks later. They had taken absolutely everything Iron Fang owned, and they still didn't think it was very much. Then the lid came off the last bucket and clattered on the floor. "Dead," Maylin said. "Dead angel's wing." The flower was a dry stick. Here's what an angel's wing is. A white flower with 2 petals shaped like wings, and every 10 days it condenses exactly 1 drop of angel's tears. A panacea. Not a metaphor. An actual, functional, cure-anything drop of water. Here's why she wanted it. "There's no time left," she said to the floor. "In 6 months, I'll become a void ghost." She'd chased a year-old rumor across the wasteland that Iron Fang had gotten hold of a seed. I reached over and touched the withered stem. Tammable plant detected. 10 points. It cost me 10 points. The stem greened from the base up. The wings opened, white and bright, and stood. I put the bucket in her hands. She looked at me, the way people look at things they've stopped believing in. Let me explain the infection properly, because it matters for everything after. You get 10 years, sometimes less. At the end, you either die, or you become a void ghost, one of the withered, twisted things that exist to tear living creatures apart. You are not contagious. Only a void ghost's bite or claw spreads it. Doesn't matter. You get driven out anyway. And here's the trap. The infection grants you a power, like a mutant's. And every single time you use it, the rot accelerates. Maylin had 10 years once. She burned it down to 6 months, 1 arrow at a time. Her power is eagle eye. Her pupils sharpen and you can watch the crimson lines physically crawl further across her skin while she uses it. I reached out and put my hand on her face. "At least," I said, "I'm not afraid." And then, because I am fundamentally incapable of leaving a moment alone, it's still a bit warm, and the texture's a little hard, like a soft rubber hose. From behind me, absolutely flat. "Wei Feng, you should let go." The talent that came down the wire was Angel's Tears. Burn stamina and spirit. Get 1 drop of dew, 10-day cooldown that shortens as my flower levels. I made one in my palm on the spot, emerald green, and tipped it into her mouth. The crimson lines dimmed and stopped burning. It doesn't cure it. I want to be clear about that, because she was immediately out loud before anyone could get their hopes up. I'm already very satisfied, she said, smiling, as long as I don't become a void ghost for the time being. Then she paid me. She handed over her own weapon, a pure white longbow, 30% to range and accuracy, a spirit artifact, which was a word I'd never heard, and neither had Shaolin, and it was about to become the most important word in my life. So I gave the bow straight back. Keep it. You still owe me 2 drops. And I ordered a weapon instead, because I'm a crossbowman, not an archer, and because she could make these things. The real reason was quieter than that. The turtle was growing, and the bigger it got, the less it could feel an ant walking on its own back. Sooner or later, this thing was going to be big enough that people could climb aboard without either of us noticing. I needed a watchman. I'd picked one, and I just handed her a leash made out of the only thing keeping her human. I'm not going to pretend that was nice of me. She took my room, I took the hall floor. She woke up in an actual bed for the first time in years and came out to breakfast to tell me exactly how much trouble I was in. 1. Big tribes keep long-term spies inside bandit bands, so somebody will find out the crystal fish is gone. 2. There are mutants who can smell it on a man. 3. Iron Fang employs a tracker. Then she gave me a ruler, which I'd been missing. Iron Fang was roughly a 4th-tier enhancer. She was a 4th-tier archer, 3rd tier in a knife fight. You're pretty amazing, I said. She stopped with her cup halfway up. What do you mean I'm pretty amazing? Her advice was to dump 9/10 of the loot and run. Of course we took them all, I said. Then I walked her outside. She got about 4 steps and stopped because the ground was moving. Rock armor turtle, level 4. 1,000 square meters, 12, 13 meters tall, 2.5 basketball courts of shell. Its name is Little Black Tortoise, I said, and it's our home. It's not small at all. New talent that came with level 4, earth rock manipulation, which meant that, from that morning on, 1,000 square meter beast walked across a wasteland and left no footprints. She spent the next 30 seconds stamping her foot on my shell, trying to summon the stairs. Nothing. Stamp. Nothing. Xiaolin laughed into both hands. Then I went and built a trap, because a tracker was coming, and I had decided to be found. That's the part people get wrong. Spider silk is the one thing on my whole body that a nose can follow, so I stopped trying to hide it. I left it out. I laid a trail, and at the end of the trail, I rebuilt the little canyon we'd camped in, a cave cut into the hillside, nice and inviting. Pits inside it with sharpened wooden spears at the bottom, floored over with thin soil on a lattice of silk. And on both slopes above the canyon, every loose rock pile in the place quietly restacked and rigged. How many of them will leave alive? Maylene asked, after they come in. That depends on their luck. She stood there counting on her fingers. Silk, stone, angels' tears, talking to animals. 4 awakened abilities in one man, which is not a thing that happens. She didn't say anything. She just named the place, privately, in her own head. Death Canyon. Back home, the hall was a fire hazard, so we built a warehouse, raised threshold against insects, divided into sections, and a room for Maylene. I gave Shaolin the blueprint and the whole job. She asked if she could keep the blueprint afterward, and the earlier drawing. I didn't ask why. Little girls get to have secrets. Then my turtle flattened a 10-meter hill into a neat stack of bricks in about 4 minutes, while both women stood there not blinking. We ran the yard wall out to the rim of my shell, 1 meter high, and strung my spider's alarm webs outside it. And then I planted a farm. I cleared a field next to the toilet because the drain went that way and because I am not too proud to use what I've got. Cabbage and tomato I left alone. There's no point taming a cabbage. You're going to eat the cabbage. The tea tree was different. Tamed it. 10 points. Talent came back as radiant growth, a weak green glow that pushes plants along. Then I spent 110 points and took it to level 3, and radiant growth became starshine domain. I lit up green. My clothes moved in no wind, and inside a 10-meter circle around me, every dying plant in that soil came back. Yellow leaves greening, dead branches budding, the whole field lifting like someone had run time backward on it. My numbers: 45, 42, 42, 56 spirit, lifespan 930 years. The tree stood 2 meters. Every leaf carried 3 tiny green sparks in it, like stars caught in the veins. I never imagined, I said, sitting in the dirt, that I'd come to another world and inherit 5,000 years of farming. I posted my lizard as garden guard, and it immediately lay down in the shade under the tea tree, and I shoot it off, because that particular spot is reserved for the owner to drink tea in later. Then, I sowed every seed I'd stolen inside that 10-meter circle, and watered it with water my fish made, and promised my fish a proper pool tomorrow. And Shaolin came running, and then stopped dead at the edge of the field. She had never seen a green tree, Not once. In 14 years, only withered ones. I just never imagined, she said, that trees would grow like that. Malin's professional valuation came in a flat voice with a grudge buried under it. That tree would trade for tens of thousands of kilos of dried meat. The only one she'd ever seen with her own eyes was half its height. Then the warning. The kind of people who can afford tea, she said, are not short of beast crystals. Once they know you own a tree that size, they will come and take it. It's hard to say, I said. Who'll be taking whom? Dinner was tomato soup with no salt in it, and Shaolin declared it the greatest soup ever made. Then Maylene looked down at her own hands, which were black to the wrist, and held them out to be inspected, palms up, arms straight, exactly like a 6-year-old presenting evidence, and then froze solid because she is 16 years old and had just realized what she'd done. Seriously, I said. Did I raise 2 daughters? I can smell it from here. Go take a bath. I don't smell bad at all. You do. You were lying when you said I smelled bad, weren't you? No, it's genuinely true that you stink. Red hot stones into the tub to heat the water, which is the entire plumbing technology of that era, and both of them nearly cried about it. Then I made tea. Pan-fried the leaves in the steel pot, using scale hardening as an oven glove, which I'm aware is showing off. Kneaded them, brewed them, and in the bowl, the leaves opened up and those little green sparks refracted through the water until it looked like somebody had poured a night sky into a cup. Shaolin took a mouthful, and her whole face folded in on itself. It's so bitter. 2 seconds. Her eyes went wide. It feels so sweet now, and my head feels so cool. Maylene drank hers with her eyes shut and told me it was the best tea she'd ever heard of, which is a strange sentence until you understand she meant it as a fact about the world and not about the cup. Business plan drafted on the spot. Sell the ordinary grade for 10 times what it's worth. Keep the good stuff at home. And then, after dark, my tree lit up. Starshine Domain fires twice a day on its own. Once in daylight, once at night. And at night, a 2-meter tree standing on a shell in the middle of a dead wasteland becomes a green lantern you can see from a very long way away. Xiaolin had run out to pick leaves and just stopped, with her hand halfway up, and couldn't make herself touch it. 2 of Iron Fang's men saw my light from a long way off. Maybe there are people over there. Let's go rob them. Do you want to die? Some lights are made by beasts to attract prey. For all you know, the ferocious beast making that light is as big as a hill. He was right about the size. He was wrong about absolutely everything else, and I have never been so grateful to a coward in my life. Iron Fang came home 4 days later, in a mood that had been getting worse for the entire march, having already injured 2 of his own men for standing too close to him. Crimson Edge met him outside the gate with 200 people at his back, which is what you do when you have to deliver news like this. Father, the cultivation room is gone. The crystal fish is gone too. One slap put his son 4 meters down the road. And here's why he lost his mind. And it isn't sentiment. The fish is the water. The water is the only reason 500 armed criminals do what he says. Without it, by the end of the month, he's a large man alone in a valley with a lot of empty barrels. They found one piece of evidence, a length of white, faintly transparent rope. The tracker, a mutant with a dog's nose who can follow any scent under 3 days old, put it to his face and reported 3 separate trails. One of them lingered around the small camp. One is very faint. He paused. And the last one is very strong, and it doesn't smell human. Iron Fang smiled with all his yellow teeth. Chase them. I want to see what kind of person dares to toy with me like this. 500 men went out that night by torchlight, walking toward my canyon. He was privately pleased about the ones who die on the road, because survivors are cheaper to feed. Meanwhile, Milan woke up under a fur blanket in my room for the 3rd morning running, touched the lines on her cheek, and admitted something to the ceiling. If this continues, I'm afraid I won't be able to bear leaving. Will I? And then she rolled over, and then she rolled over again. And then she rolled around the bed like a kid on a holiday morning. I coughed from the doorway. I just came in to get something. You can continue. She went under the blanket at a speed I'd describe as tactical. Her friends had names, it turned out. Li Ming and 2 others, waiting somewhere for word about my flower. I spent the evening with the stolen hides, teaching myself Oracle Bone script by writing each character next to its modern shape, like the world's least useful crossword. Then the bucket ran dry, so I pulled my fish out and tamed it and pushed it straight to level 3. 10 points and 110. Water element condensation. 48, 45, 46, 70 spirit. Lifespan, 1,200 years. The fish was half a meter long now and wrapped a meter-wide ball of water around my entire arm. And Shaolin poked my cheek and informed me I'd nearly crushed it to death. We gave it the bathtub. Through the link, it complained that the bathtub was too small. We'll dig you a pond, I said. Later. Maylene recited the Yue Tan tribe's standing bounty for that fish from memory, flat, like a shopping list. A seat among the tribe's elders. 1/20th of every drop of water my fish ever made. A large house. 20 craftsmen bonded to your household. And 10,000 caddies of dried meat. All right, I said. That's enough. Water is the currency here. Not metal, not crystals. Water. And I had it in a bucket. And an elder's seat pulls in every ambitious man alive within 100 kilometers. Her advice was to run east to the Golden Lion tribe. 20 days. Too slow. Sometimes, I said, danger is also an opportunity. Then I asked her to read the hides for me. I know it, she said, taking one. Isn't it just an animal-shaped character? Pause. The first character is white? White wavy grass? No. White vine grass? That's not right either. She lifted the hide up until it covered her entire face. It seems you don't know many words either, I said. I've just temporarily forgotten some words. Xiaolin, for the record, had barely seen written language at all. So, 3 illiterates in my stone house, holding the technical library of a dead civilization. I have never felt more like a fraud in my life. What was actually on those hides was the reason Iron Fang was never just a bandit. Human enhancement secret medicine, formulas, tier 1 through tier 5. 3 ingredients for tier 1, 7 for tier 2, 15 for 3, 24 for 4, and the complete 5th tier formula. 36 hides of it. Maylene's valuation, worth barely less than the crystal fish. Because it maximizes what an ordinary human body can become. And she only reached 4th tier at all by burning her own lifespan to get there. So, 500 men, a water source nobody else on the continent has, and the complete enhancement library. He wasn't building a gang. Somebody had just stopped him early, and that somebody was me, by accident, in about 6 seconds. We'll enhance Xiaolin, I said, once we've collected the ingredients. Xiaolin's ears went straight up. You'll have to be my female general. I will become a powerful female general, she said, with the exact seriousness of someone accepting a commission. And Mylene mentioned that she happened to know a person who makes secret medicine. Her name was Li Ming, and she was, at that moment, at Yuetan tribe, which is where we were already going. The tracker found the trail. Iron Fang drew his sword in front of 500 men and said, anyone who holds me back, I'll chop to pieces. And then, because he actually understood people, he said the other half. Whoever catches the thief gets 100 buckets of water and 1,000 caddies of jerky. That's a year of living. That's a year of not being afraid. I'd have taken that deal at 14, and so would you. 500 torches went into the dark. He had 2 memories he never talked about. The first was being hunted by his own tribe for stealing those enhancement formulas. The second was his most trusted friend walking away with 400 of his men. He left his emptied base standing behind him as bait for that friend, in case he ever came back. Then the tracker stopped and pointed into a narrow canyon. Boss, the smell of the thieves is very strong up ahead. 500 men filed in, shoulder to shoulder, because that's what the ground made them do. The scouts went into the cave first and reported that the floor felt soft. Then a silk line went, and the floor went. And the spears at the bottom did what spears do. And here's the thing about a professional army versus 500 criminals. The screaming from that cave came back as relief. It was a trap. I thought we'd run into a ferocious beast. They relaxed. The cave was only my switch. The silk ran the length of both walls, and it parted in sequence, one line after another, all the way up the canyon, and every rock pile I had spent a day restacking came down on a column packed too tight to run in either direction. Most of 500 men died under my rocks. The rest came out with broken heads, broken arms, broken legs. Iron Fang came out of the rubble alive, because when the mountain started moving, he wedged himself into a crevice instead of running, which is the single most impressive thing he ever did. One of his 4 captains was dead. Shadowhound and Sly Serpent crawled out. The tracker survived with a snapped arm and bought his life on the spot by pointing down the trail. Boss, the thieves went that way. And they kept coming, which I had counted on and did not enjoy. Meanwhile, I was running a training camp for one. Xiaolin doing push-ups to failure with a palm-sized puddle of sweat under her chin, counting 29, 29.5, 29.6, 30. Then acupoint massage, then anatomy, which is a strange class to teach a 14-year-old, but the syllabus was, here is the throat, here is the heart. This one stops a man, and this one only slows him down. Maelin thought the training was far too gentle. She was thinking about how fast you can make a soldier. I was thinking about how long a body lasts, and I'd already noticed the way she moved, trained professionally by someone, and the things she said in her sleep. Angel's tears came in 7 days instead of 10. The domain was speeding my flower up. One problem, we had nothing to keep a drop of it in. Every container we owned killed it, and the ear-tugging had become a real game, with rules. She dodges, I grab. If you can really dodge it, I told her, you can graduate from your apprenticeship. She started practicing when she thought I wasn't looking. I carved a display box for the tea, because a good product needs packaging, and because I have never once in my life been able to leave a sales pitch alone. Then I nailed a piece of cloth to a board and drew her sister from description. Long black hair, cat ears, a face she insisted was prettier than her own. Red eyes, cold, doesn't smile. Xiaolin corrected the nose, then the mouth, twice. And Maylene noticed the thing I hadn't wanted to look at. The version I drew first was what that woman would look like grown up, and the version Xiaolin corrected me into was a 4-year-old memory of a girl. Later, when Xiaolin was asleep, Maylene asked me quietly whether I shouldn't tell her the truth. Xiaolin is very smart, I said. She knows what she's doing. She already knows the odds. That's the entire point of hope. It's not a prediction. It's a thing you carry. Maylene went to her room and lay down and put a hand on her own chest, and found a word she'd never had a use for before. That was her first sleepless night in 8 days. Down the hall, Xiaolin was practicing the tea ceremony with 1 big cup and 4 small ones, over and over, because Wei Feng said these teacups can make tea more expensive. I walled the plantation behind a stone screen shaped like a hill with thumb-sized vent holes, and then went in with a small brush and pollinated the flowers by hand. Flowers need pollinating before they bear fruit, I told Maylene. She looked around the empty, silent, insect-free wasteland and understood. You can invite your friends over, by the way, I said, when the time comes. She stopped. You mean I can consider this place my home? What nonsense is that? You've been here for days. Of course it's your home. You even have your own room. She grabbed the front of my shirt with both hands, which I did not expect, and held on like I might vanish. Can someone like me really stay? Why not? I think I quite like someone like you. I want to stay. Then I dressed everybody up, because we were going to Yuetan tribe and I refused to sneak. If we're going in, I said, we go through the main gate. The goal is to create a sensation. Me, a white straight-cut robe with a dark belt, which I copied wholesale from every period drama I have ever watched. Xiaolin and Maylene, modified maid uniforms, my own design, cut properly. Understand what a clean white robe means in a world where everyone is the color of the ground. I picked mine for exactly one reason. It doesn't say rich, it says untouchable. It says this man has never had to carry anything. If someone didn't know you, Maylene said slowly, they absolutely would not dare to offend you. They'd assume you're from a big city. Then she turned to go change back, because her crimson lines didn't match the dress. I gave her a mask instead, white with a plum blossom on the cheek, and a job title. Guardian to Lord Wei Feng. I made the title up on the spot, and it stuck for good. She put it on, and her whole posture changed. She stopped standing like a girl with something to hide, and started standing like a weapon somebody very expensive had brought along. I parked my turtle in rubble at the foot of the mountains and had it pull its own stone armor over the house until the whole thing read as a small hill. The spider took the perimeter with one instruction: drive off anything that comes near. The lizard walked with us, invisible. Yuetan tribe, when I finally saw it, was a palisade of whole logs with a queue outside it. Hunting teams, traveling merchants, hunters, all paying the entry fee. The 3 of us walked straight up the middle of that queue. Nobody asked me for the fee. Nobody said a word. Please come in. And behind us, immediately, go and report these 3 to Sovereign Leaf. Inside, the tribe had rings too, and the rings meant the same thing they'd meant at the camp, only with 10,000 people instead of 300. Outer ring, the bonded laborers, the ones who work off a debt they'll never finish. Inner ring, people who can pay tax, all of them pale, all of them thin, all of them with that specific hollow look around the eyes that comes from being permanently one bad week from nothing. The first prober arrived within 4 minutes, 17 or so, waist-length fire-red hair, red eyes, a gray robe worn like she'd lost an argument about it, fire awakener, and, as it turned out, the tribe leader's eldest daughter. Your temperament, she announced, is very unique. Your temperament is also quite unique. Ha ha ha. She lit up like a struck match. Right? A lot of people say that. Her maid started poking her in the back to stop her from continuing. Lan Xing. And her official reason for attaching herself to 3 total strangers was, our young lady is a very kind person. She took us to a restaurant. 2 stories, wooden, and almost completely empty because in that tribe nobody can afford to eat food they didn't personally catch. Xiaolin started to sit down. Maylene hooked her collar without even looking. Maids are not allowed to sit. Feiyan looked at the maids' uniforms. Then she looked down at her own robe, and then she quietly died inside for about 4 seconds. I took out the portrait. It's so realistic. Is it the work of a great painter? He is, I said, a very special great painter. Who is she? This person is the older sister, I said, of one of my family. and a small hand closed on the back of my shirt, out of sight, at the word family. I felt it. I kept talking. Feiyan asked where I was from, and I looked out the window at a hill that was actually a turtle and told the first genuinely enormous lie of my career. Zhuanwu City. Then a man showed up. 180, a face with a certain sleaziness sanded into it, and a visible terror of Feiyan, who had, at some point in their shared history, put him in bed for 10 days. Chen Guo, Elder's grandson. And he sneered at the name, which was extremely helpful of him, because it meant I got to be reluctant. So I described my daily life in Zhuanwu City. Porridge and pickles in the morning while reading a written account of yesterday's events. Work, a proper lunch, whole roast chicken, pan-fried steak, stewed fish, braised duck, and in the afternoon, tea. Starshine tea, I said, from the sacred tree of Zhuanwu City, bitter first, sweet after, and it lengthens your life. That last part wasn't a lie. That's the part that makes the whole thing work. Xiaolin brewed it with her eyes locked on the cup the entire time, exactly as rehearsed, which read as sacred ritual rather than a 14-year-old terrified of spilling. Feiyan got the bitterness, then the sweetness, then the cool rush up the back of the skull, and then her stomach, which had been knotted for years, let go all at once. This tea is absolutely amazing. It's the best I've ever had. Then she offered me 10 intermediate superior beast crystals for a box. 100, I said. Deal. Instantly, no haggling. And I want to be honest with you, I was the one who got thrown by that, not her. Chen Guo bought the last box for 150 and left with a face like a slammed door. Afterward, Maylene explained, in a very careful voice, what 100 intermediate superior beast crystals buys in a real city. 10,000 caddies of dried meat. So, it's not that I underpriced it, I said. No, she said. It's that young lady is an extremely wealthy woman. I have never in my life felt so thoroughly out-negotiated by someone who agreed with me instantly. While I was doing all that, a man was walking toward me with 500 people. Iron Fang's beard had gone gray on the march, not with age. I want to be clear that I did not do that to him, with dust. Days of forced marching will do that, and he had not slept properly since the canyon. Shadowhound took a squad into the rubble field where my turtle was hiding, and came back bleeding, with a length of white transparent silk stuck to his forearm. It's a ferocious spider, which reframed their entire investigation. They hadn't been chasing me, they'd been chasing a beast, and the tracker, who had a broken arm and a strong personal interest in remaining useful, sold them a story that fit. The thief climbed the cliff because my spider carried him. The 2 human trails, he said, led to Yuetan tribe, and Iron Fang remembered the Yuetan messengers who'd come to him years ago and offered him a seat among their elders for the crystal fish. He had both of them killed and sent nothing back. Here's the part he never found out, and I only found out because I asked the survivor nicely. His tracker and his captain, Sly Serpent, were both long-term undercover agents, 5 years deep, from 2 different rival tribes, each of them sent in to steal the same fish, each of them having failed at it for 5 years. They struck a deal with each other in an alley in broad daylight, which tells you how much time they thought they had left. Let Iron Fang crash into Yuetan tribe. Let the 2 of them tear each other apart, then walk in and pick my fish out of the wreckage. The tracker refined it further, and it was genuinely clever. Leak the news that Iron Fang is coming. The thief panics, hands my fish to Sovereign Leaf for protection, and then it's in one known place, in the middle of a battle, instead of on a man who doesn't leave footprints. Word went back to the column. The boss hits at midnight. I had about 4 hours and no idea I had them. Now, let me tell you about Sovereign Leaf. Now let me give you the arithmetic of that tribe, because I did not understand it until she explained it to me, and then I couldn't stop seeing it. Every generation, the Yuetan tribe produces exactly 1 water element awakener, and that person becomes Sovereign Leaf, and that person makes water for 10,000 people for the rest of their life. Not leads, not rules, makes water. That's the whole job, and I want you to hold on to that. This generation's heir was Lan Xing, and Lan Xing came out fire, so the line ends. And when the line ends, so does the tribe. I know all of this because I was told it later by the woman in question, sitting up in bed with a bandage around her middle, in the flat voice people use for facts they've stopped being able to feel. That morning, the Grand Elder had proposed driving the useless people out of the outer ring to stretch the water further. She'd refused. They are all members of the Yuetan tribe. I can't abandon them. Their one hope had been buying the crystal fish off Iron Fang. It was, at that moment, in a bucket under my bed. And that morning, the spies reported it stolen. I asked her once later how many times she'd been outside those walls. She had never once left, not for a day. She described herself privately as a water-producing doll in a cage, and the single thing she was grateful for in her entire life was that her daughter came out fire, because it meant the girl got to have one. Feiyan brought her the tea. It cleared a headache that ability had been grinding into the back of her skull for years, and for about 30 seconds, she felt like a person. Then she asked the price. 100. You spendthrift woman, I'm gonna give you a good beating. Then a guard came in and said Iron Fang would be at Yuetan tribe tonight. And there's one more detail about her that mattered more than anything else in the next 12 hours. Inside her own tribe, Sovereign Leaf consents water being condensed. Chen Guo delivered the 150 crystals personally, with a fresh red handprint across one cheek. His grandfather had slapped him for spending it, and his grandmother had slipped him the crystals anyway. That bag alone converted to 15,000 evolution points. With Fian's 100 on top, I was sitting on the 25,000, enough for 2 level 5 tamed beasts. Fayan came back that evening with news. She had men out looking for a cat-eared woman on her own initiative because I'd mentioned it once. Then she asked whether Zhuanmu City was short of water. Behind her, out of her eyeline, Maylene was making a series of increasingly desperate hand signals. Zhuanmu City has no shortage of water, I said. We have a crystal fish. Then she told me why she'd asked, and it stopped being a game. Her mother had collapsed from exhaustion once in front of her, and got up the next morning and made water again. Feiyan wanted to see the outside world for exactly one reason. She was looking for something that could take her mother's place. After she left, I conjured a ball of water in the middle of the room to prove I hadn't been lying. And then both of them leaned in and drank out of opposite sides of the same floating sphere, faces getting closer and closer as it shrank, until it was the size of a fist. I drank the rest. Why does it taste a bit sweet? Both of them went scarlet for 2 entirely different reasons, and Shaolin announced with enormous dignity that she simply wasn't going to waste water. Then somebody knocked on the door. I, Sovereign Leaf, would like to meet the owner of the crystal fish. Malin's immediate reaction was to shove both of us toward the window. You go, I'll stop her. And I flicked her on the forehead and opened the door. Sovereign Leaf. Real name, Lan Hua. Late 20s, shoulder-length light blue hair, light blue eyes, and an elegance with something extremely hard underneath it. She had felt water condense in this room from across the tribe. Her offer came with no threat attached at all, which is how I knew she was dangerous. 1/15 of every drop that fish makes, for as long as it lives. So I opened my hand and floated a basketball of water in the middle of the room. 2 women stared at it with their mouths open. Just like my mother, Feiyan said. The same awakened ability. I let them think I was a water element awakener because it was the one thing on this continent that made me untouchable to these people, specifically. And then Sovereign Leaf made her actual move. Silk over a blade. I can marry my silly daughter to you. My room went off like a dropped crate. Shaolin. This red-haired woman can't marry Lord Mu. Malian inventing an urgent mission somewhere else. Immediately, with no details. Feiyan, crimson. Mother, stop talking nonsense. Me, perfectly seriously. If you ask me, I think it's worth a try. Understand, none of that was a proposal. That was a probe, and I walked into it grinning. She wanted a water awakener inside her walls, and she needed to know what would move me. 3 panicking women gave her nothing, and she took her leave very politely. I found out the rest of this later from a man who was extremely motivated to be helpful. Across the street, 2 schemers watched her walk into the hotel instead of out to meet Iron Fang. What else could it be? The thief must have contacted Sovereign Leaf beforehand, and we're the ones who set it up. I had not contacted anybody. I was upstairs losing an argument about a marriage joke. So, the tracker moved my deadline forward without telling me. Iron Fang came out of the dark in the middle of the main street, carrying a dead patrolman by the head, and dropped him in the road. Where is the thief? Then he clapped both of his undercover agents on the shoulder with the flat of his sword. You 2 should lead the charge. Sly Serpent mouthed a count. 1, 2, 3, and they both ran. The tracker broke left, shouting a warning to nobody. Iron Fang was behind him before he finished the word. One flash of light. The tracker's problems ended. Sly Serpent got a hand around his throat and got shoved to the back of the line, and while he was down there, he finally understood the thing he'd missed for 5 years. He'd been hiding 4th tier himself. So had Iron Fang, by a considerably larger margin. Then Sovereign Leaf arrived. Water came out of the ground in a pillar and jammed his sword arm and her fist, with water bursting out of the elbow like a piston, caved in the side of his face and threw him 10 meters down the street. He got up spitting teeth and said the line that tells you exactly what he was. As expected, a woman is a woman. Her fists are as weak as a child's. Once I catch you, I'll lock you up and keep you as a pet that produces water. I was upstairs for all of this. I'm giving it to you the way she gave it to me, weeks later, in a very flat voice. 2 water whips cracked the paving where he'd been standing. As expected of a 6th-tier awakener, he said. And then he did the thing that nobody in that wasteland knew about, including me. And then he reached up and tore a thin red thread off his own chin. Lion ears came up out of his hair, his pupils flooded solid red, his body swelled to nearly double, bloodlion form, a fifth-tier speed mutant, which he had been suppressing with a piece of string for years, so that everyone in the wasteland would keep thinking he was a large man with a sword. One pass. Her stomach opened up. The only reason she was still standing is that she had spent that entire day condensing water for 10,000 people and had nothing left in the tank. Bleeding on one knee, biting her own lip to stay conscious, she put both hands flat on the ground. A cube of water, 5 meters on a side, swallowed Iron Fang whole and drowned him, standing up, in the middle of a street. She was maybe 20 seconds from winning. Then the cube started to sag. Sly Serpent read it in one glance and slipped away toward my hotel, because if my fish wasn't in the street, then the man who knew where it was would do. Now. Upstairs, at that moment, we were having a fight about the marriage joke. Xiaolin was looking down at herself and doing some very unfavorable arithmetic. Maylene had her arms folded and had hummed twice, pointedly, at nothing. Oh ho, are my two princesses jealous? Vinegar? What vinegar? I didn't eat any vinegar. I picked up a pillow. Maylin immediately put herself between me and Xiaolin, with both arms out like a crossing guard. And that is the tableau Sly Serpent walked in on when he took the door off its hinges. A man holding a pillow, and 2 women prepared to die about it. Thief, he said. You really know how to enjoy yourself. Misunderstanding. We were discussing the seating arrangements. His mutation was his hands, claws long enough to open a throat, and a broken line sprint that no archer alive can lead, which I found genuinely impressive for about a second and a half. Maylin couldn't get a shot. I hardened my arm and punched him in the face once while he was mid-lunge. Broken nose, most of his teeth. Impossible. Nothing is impossible. Then I picked him up by the collar and carried him downstairs like luggage. Outside, it had gone very wrong. Feyen was holding off Crimson Edge and Shadowhound, alone with fireballs, badly. Her mother was on her knees in a spreading pool of her own blood. The cube was coming apart. Crimson Edge got inside Feyon's guard and swung for her neck, and I was 11 steps away with an unconscious man in my hand. An unconscious Sly Serpent hit him in the side of the head and knocked the blade out of the air. You lot, I said, are really in a sorry state. And then, because I am who I am, I opened negotiations in the middle of a battle. Lan Xing, 100 intermediate superior beast crystals, 1 price. I'll take care of all of them for you. I promise you, I'll give you as much beast crystal as you want. She was screaming it. Just save my mother. Iron Fang came out of the collapsing water. Hand over my crystal fish, or I'll make you wish you were dead. Stealing? I said. I usually only take things. The sword came down full of holes. I stepped inside it, dropped into a horse stance, and put my elbow through his heart. He went backward off his feet coughing blood, and a spike of stone came up out of the road underneath him and finished the sentence. The king of 500 bandits, from first contact to done, took about 6 seconds. Crimson Edge charged and took an arrow through the side of the neck, which was Maylin, and which was frankly a nicer death than he'd earned. Shadowhound ran with what was left, straight down a side street, into an invisible 4-meter lizard. My lizard did not require supervision. The screaming stopped fairly quickly. The hunting team arrived approximately 1 minute later and started shouting at Emmy to get on the ground, which is when Lan Xing turned around and detonated. He's our savior! What are you yelling about? Are you waiting to come and collect our bodies? I'll be honest, I was slightly disappointed. I'd been hoping for a reason to find out where my limit actually was. The elders arrived after I'd finished the fighting, which is traditional. Lan Hua was on the ground with a hole in her, that the doctor described as serious and slow to heal, and beyond any medicine they had. And the very first question out of the Grand Elder's mouth, at the side of the woman who had just fought a 5th-tier mutant to a standstill for them, was this. How are your injuries? Will they affect tomorrow's water condensation? Not, are you alive? Not, thank you. I counted. I was standing right there. Will you still be able to produce? Then they drafted an emergency water plan out loud in front of her in 4 sentences. The outer ring, the bonded laborers, goes to 1 bowl every 2 days. Everyone else reduces by 1/3. It was presented to me, in my hearing, as saving water. What it actually was cutting the water of the people at the bottom and calling it arithmetic. Maylene said it without any particular heat, the way you'd read out a weather report. A lot of tribes don't care about the water supply for their people. They'd rather some of them die. Then the world, I said, is the thing that's wrong. Then they started lecturing her about the trouble she'd caused, while I stood 4 meters away and counted. Her daughter went off like a struck match, and I have rarely enjoyed anything more. You dare claim to be acting for the tribe? Where is your water awakener? You're a pile of vermin who do nothing but rely on my mother. The Grand Elder retreated rather than lose a shouting match to a 17-year-old in front of me, which was the smartest thing he did all night. That's how the adult world is, Lan Hua said afterward, from the ground, with her eyes shut. Only usefulness counts. She knows exactly what she is to them. She is known for about 15 years. That's the part that got me. They were still sitting in the street. Feion went to lift her mother and discovered her own legs had gone numb from adrenaline and terror. So, Sovereign Leaf turned her head and said, very politely, "Lord Wei Feng, could you please carry me home?" I picked her up. Yaolin chose that exact moment to walk out of the inn and open with, "Master Mu, what are you doing hugging this auntie?" I felt the woman in my arms take that hit somewhere structural. And then, while being carried up the street with a hole in her stomach, Sovereign Leaf turned her head back over my shoulder and silently mouthed at the two girls behind us, "I was hugged by Wei Feng. Aren't you jealous? You've definitely never been hugged by him." Shaolin's ears went up into a hard V. That despicable old woman. Later, alone, while her bandage was being changed, Lan Hua thought about a thing she has never once said out loud. She is never married. She told me all of this much later, and then told me to forget it. Lan Xing is her twin sister's daughter. The sister walked out of this tribe years ago, chasing the truth, whatever that meant to her, and left behind a baby, a job, a cage, and a water supply. Daughter, she thought, looking at the girl asleep in a chair, the debts your mother owes are for you to repay. The next day she asked me for the truth about her tribe, and I gave it to her, because she'd earned it, and because nobody else was ever going to. In my opinion, Yuetan tribe is doomed to perish sooner or later, and the time is not far off. Because a settlement that stands on one person dies on the day that person does, and last night proved it in public on the street. She fell, and instead of going out to look for another hope, they immediately started calculating how to keep drinking her. Feion learned that night that her mother had been fainting, regularly, for months, more and more often. Then I gave her 12 reforms, fast, because she was going to lose interest in being lectured within about 90 seconds. Don't feed idle hands for free. Put them on crafts. Find the one thing this tribe makes better than anyone, and sell it. Send caravans out instead of hoarding. Prospect for new water instead of praying about the old. And number 12, restructure the leadership so that fewer hands sit between the water and the people who drink it. She stared at me for a while. "Is this all the insight you've come up with?" "No," I said. "That's the part you can survive. Do it slowly, move too fast, and the elders will simply lock you in a room and call you a lucky water-producing baby." Then she offered me the tribe, not a share, the seat, Sovereign Leaf of the Yuetan tribe, 10,000 people, and her daughter thrown in on top, which I want you to notice she offered like a woman closing a property deal. I refuse, because the job on offer was to become a water machine for 10,000 strangers who had, the previous evening, calculated her rationing while she bled. And because I already owned a house that walks. She took it well. She handed over the 100 crystals through Feion and then fell asleep in the middle of the next sentence, snoring very softly. At the door, I left her something instead. "If you can't stay here any longer, you're allowed to be a little selfish and live for yourself." Feion stood in that doorway for a long time, turning over a question she had never once been allowed to ask. Why couldn't we leave? Then she went and slept on the floor beside her mother's bed, in case she needed anything in the night. On the walk back, Maylene asked me why I'd said no. "What does being tribe leader actually get you?" Shaolin answered before Maylene could, counting on her fingers cheerfully, like a school quiz. "We don't go hungry. We have someone to protect us, and we have plenty of water to drink." Then she stopped, and her ears came up. "Maylene," she said, "those things, we also have them at home, behind Little Black Tortoise." Maylin didn't have anything to say to that. Meanwhile, Maylin went looking for her team. They had a private code they left on walls. I came, I left, I'm staying, and which safe house. There was nothing, anywhere, on any wall in the tribe, which meant her friend had gone in and never come back out. So she knocked out the two men sleeping in the alley, lifted a hidden board, and dropped into a cave-stuffed floor to ceiling, with bowls, buckets, jars, and boxes. There was a blonde woman, face down asleep on a table covered in experiments. The woman came up swinging and stopped a fist about half a second from Maylene's nose, then squinted. My little Yu Yue couldn't possibly be this clean, or wear such beautiful clothes. Mask off. And Li Ming hugged her and rubbed her cheek against Maylene's like an animal. Wow, little Yu Yue smells so good now. 23 days underground. Alone. I have done 4 days in a hole, and I complained about it for a year, trying to build a cure for void ghost infection out of whatever she could reach, scatterbrained about literally everything except numbers, which she has never once gotten wrong in her life. How she ate for 23 days without leaving the hole. She dug through the wall up into the house above and robbed its pantry. 3 times. Day 3, day 6, day 8. Did he really think I'd be stupid enough to take it every day? She also complained that the man who lived up there shouted a lot, and it ruined her concentration. That man was Zhao Hu, and he is now the captain of my first army, newly promoted hunting team captain. robbed 3 times by a ghost, half a laughingstock among his own men. His wife May was one of Sovereign Leaf's maids and had been his sweetheart since they were both 5 years old. He was tearing his own cupboards apart, hunting for that thief when he stopped, mid-swing, holding a shelf. He'd been hoarding meat and water in a locked cupboard, while the woman who made the water for the entire tribe collapsed from making it. His father had also been hunting team, which is the only reason I have a first army today. His father taught him exactly one sentence about their job, and Zhao Hu had been repeating it to his own men for years without thinking about it. We all owe Sovereign Leaf a debt. Then someone knocked on his door. Captain, we have a mission. And from the way they said it, he already knew what the mission was. His wife took his armor off the hook and put it in his hands. Follow your heart. Don't worry about me and the children. If it really doesn't work out, we can just leave Yuetan tribe. Then, holding up 2 fingers in a scissor shape. But you can't bring women home. Otherwise... Back in the hole, Li Ming was trying to feed Mei Lin an unidentified purple liquid. This is my newly researched secret medicine. It's absolutely not poisonous. Track record, Ruo Han had diarrhea for a day. Serafina slept for 2 days and 2 nights. Mei Lin declined. So Li Ming drank it herself, smacked her lips, frowned. It seems like something's missing. Why is there still no reaction? And then, in the exact same tone, I only have 63 days left to live, so it's better to die by poisoning myself. She said it like a scheduling detail. I have met a lot of brave people. She is not brave. She has simply filed it. Then Milin told her about Angel's tears. Not a cure. She was very careful about that. But a stop. A break. It halts the erosion. And a woman who had spent 23 days in a hole under a tribe, with 63 days on the clock, went from crouched on the floor with her head in her hands to standing up with her golden eyes absolutely blazing. Then, being who she is, she noticed something Malin hadn't. If it were the old you, she said, you'd have taken Angel's wing back long ago and left. People always change. Malin looked at the wall. Life used to be too boring. Now I want to try something different. Li Ming ran down a checklist she'd been taught by their friend Serafina, who has opinions about romance. Have you met someone you like? Malin denied it at maximum volume, and then smiled the wrong way for the entire rest of the story. She wouldn't come. She'd rather stay in her hole and research, so Malin played the only card that mattered. 1 drop, every 10 days. It comes from him. Take it or come with us. I need at least 10 drops of Angel's tears to do my research. Then she panicked about her face. Daisy said normal people hate monsters like us, and wrapped her entire head in cloth, leaving 2 eyes and 2 nostrils, and had to have the mouth cut open again afterwards so she could talk. And on the way out, Maylene stopped dead in the street. They hadn't passed a single patrol, and that one detail bought me an entire tribe. In that tribe, at any hour of any night, there are always patrols. Phaon's 100 crystals came to 10,700 points, because she'd quietly slipped in 7 extra. I walked an invisible route to a back street and spent 10,000 of it on my lizard. Tricolor lizard, level 5. Limb regeneration, armor, plus wound closing, plus regrowing what it loses, which turns a 4-meter ambush predator into, functionally, a tank that repairs itself. It doubled to 8 meters, the size of a tour bus, fist-sized triangular scales with 3 colors swirling inside them. 62, 61, 63, 90 spirit. Lifespan, 1,450 years. If Iron Fang takes a hit to the heart from you, I told it, he'll probably die on the spot. It tried to lick me, and I slapped it on the nose. Only Little Black Tortoise can handle your tongue. I got back to the room to find Shaolin pressed into a corner, white, shaking. It's dangerous outside. Something terrifying walked past. It had this oppressive feeling, and it looked into our room. That was little Kai. Going to guard the door, I apologized. Then, to make it up to her, I volunteered an 8-meter invisible monster for dance lessons. You can invent your own dance, I said. If you think a pose looks good, write it down. String all the poses together. That's a dance. She took that extremely seriously, and I have regretted it ever since. Then Maylene arrived, dragging a woman by the cloth wrapped around her head. She's a bit absent-minded, Maylene explained, still dragging. Taking direct action is usually more effective than talking. Li Ming, 18, blonde, golden eyes. And when she looked up, she got something she had genuinely never received from a stranger in her adult life. A look with no disgust in it and no distance in it. She sat down very stiffly, went scarlet, and started running Serafina's checklist in her own head. Racing heart. Can't stop looking. So I fell in love with Wei Feng at first sight. That's impossible. I'm not the kind of shallow girl Daisy described. Then she said the sentence that cracked the whole night open in the most casual voice in the room, while everyone else was arguing about something else. I think someone is plotting against Sovereign Leaf. And there it was. Because here were the 2 facts nobody had put together. The entire night patrol had vanished, and hunting team men were watching this in. I'd assumed they were there to catch me. They weren't. They were there to stop me from helping her. But you cannot move that many hunting team men against the woman who makes their water. Not for a few elders, not for money. You can only do it if you can offer them something better than her, which means there is a new water source. So, we're not going to rescue her tonight? No. First I want to know what the elders bought their army with. I stood up. And then I'd like to collect payment. Steal? I said, to the look Maylene gave me. No. We're going to collect. Sovereign Leaf will be grateful to us. Motives, in order of honesty, curiosity, repaying a woman who fought a mutant for her people, and the fact that a level 6 tamed beast was going to cost me several hundred crystals I did not have. Shaolin's asleep, I said. We'll have to leave her in the... No, I want to go too. She had been flat on the table with her ears twitching for 10 minutes. Then she got a proper look at Li Ming's bandaged head, yelped, and hid behind me. And Li Ming's eyes went dull, and she refused to unwrap her face for the rest of the night. I had 2 watched exits and 1 enormous invisible solution. The lizard parked its flank across the entire front of the inn and mirrored an empty street back at the men watching it. Then we climbed on its back and rode over the rooftops of Yue Tan tribe. It was so precise it crossed roofs without cracking a single tile. All it did was shake dust down inside people's houses. Below us, my intuition just told me something terrifying passed in front of us. Stop talking nonsense. Keep your eyes on the hotel. And Xiaolin sat up there with both arms out, hair going backward, on the first night out she had ever had in her life, on top of a monster. It feels, she reported, like riding a roller coaster. She has never seen a roller coaster. She'd heard me use the word once. She's been saving it. From the rooftops, we could see Sovereign Leaf's house ringed with torches and most of the hunting team standing around it. So I didn't go there. I went to the Elders' Row. Silk over the guards' mouths, silk over their arms, stuck them to their own walls. A technique I'm told belongs to a certain extremely talkative individual in a red suit, and then started loading my lizard, which had by then been promoted from pack mule to freight vehicle. Take the good things, I told Xiaolin. Don't take chairs. She put the chair down, with visible regret. Maylene's own reaction to this, which she told me later. She'd spent years stealing small things in the dark, alone, terrified. And now she was walking through a rich man's house in company, taking everything, and nobody was even awake. Behind one locked door, Chen Guo was hammering to be let in, and his grandmother was refusing. And through that door, I got the last piece. The Grand Elder had agreed to merge Yue Tan tribe into the Thousand Trees tribe, and in the terms of that merger, Sovereign Leaf and Lan Xing were both listed, not as leaders, as assets, handed to the Thousand Trees chief as part of the package, together with their bloodline, because the Thousand Trees underground river is going to run dry one day, and they want a supply of water awakeners on the shelf before it does. That's the better future the hunting team was bought with. Merge, and nobody has to depend on that woman ever again, because she and her daughter become somebody's property, and the tribe gets to drink. Chen Guo's contribution to the conversation through the door was, she'll be mine sooner or later, only I am worthy of her. His grandmother's counteroffer was, Elder Zu's daughter is quite good. She's tall and easy to raise. I silk-strapped Grandma Lu to a chair and asked her politely to show me the backyard. The backyard had a greenhouse in it, wooden frame, hide curtains, braziers burning to hold the temperature, the floor soaked through, the size of 2 football fields, green vegetables, fruit trees, medicinal herbs, rows of them. That is where the water was going, while the outer ring got 1 bowl every 2 days. Li Ming was already crouched in the middle of it, naming herbs out loud like a woman reading a menu. Which part should we dig out? Of course, I said. We'll dig them all up. I put both palms on the ground, and the floor of that greenhouse rippled like water and squeezed every single plant up out of the soil, roots intact, like beans out of a pod. That took more out of me than the fight had, not physically. It's a mental drain, holding that much soil in your head at once, and I came up gray and sweating. And then I saw what Xiaolin was holding, a vine with tubers on it. Sweet potato. I stopped moving for about 4 seconds. I never expected to see a sweet potato here, because meat feeds a camp, and nothing but plants has ever fed a city. That vine was worth more to me than everything else in the yard put together, and the woman I took it from had been growing it as a hobby, while her neighbors rationed water by the bowl. Then I fired 100 silk manipulation at full stretch, and 100 transparent threads went out at once and whipped every plant in that greenhouse up onto my lizard and lashed it down, doing the work of a dozen men in about 90 seconds, until little Kai was trussed up like a dumpling, with its legs splayed out sideways. I've realized, Maylene said, watching, that we're all superfluous. Total after the elders' houses, 138,620 points. Xiaolin went home strapped to a lizard with only her head sticking out of the silk. And on the way I did the arithmetic I hadn't said out loud yet. At level 6, that shell should carry about 100,000 square meters, room for 100 people, and a city needs a cadre. A 6th-tier water awakener who can sense every drop inside her own walls. A fire awakener who held off 2 3rd-tier fighters alone at 17. I wasn't going to rescue Sovereign Leaf. I was going to recruit her. We said goodbye to Granny Lou, still tied to her chair in an empty greenhouse. Since you're all moving to join another tribe, I told her, don't bother bringing all this with you. It might all die on the way. By the time we got back to Sovereign Leaf's courtyard, there were 13 men standing in the gateway. Zhao Hu at the front with a shield and a sword, about a dozen young men behind him. In front of them, the Grand Elder, and between 200 and 300 of the hunting team. Elder, this is rebellion. Zhao Hu didn't move, and I am only loyal to Sovereign Leaf. The Elder didn't argue with him. He turned around and pitched to the crowd instead, which is what you do when you already have the numbers. Merge with 1,000 trees, and nobody ever goes thirsty again. Don't you all want to drink your fill of water? And 300 men roared back at him. 98% of that hunting team signed on, and I want to be fair to them. They were thirsty. The 2% who didn't were all young, every single one of them. We have benefited from Sovereign Leaf's water in the past, Zhao Hu said into the noise. Now it is our turn to give back. I'd rather die than give in. Then Fayan came out of the house wrapped in fire, and she didn't throw any of it. Has my mother ever done anything to wrong any of you? Silence. This is how you repay her? She gathers water until she collapses, and this is how you repay her? 300 men studying their own boots. If you want a good life, then quit the Yuetan tribe and go join 1,000 trees. Or is it that my mother won't allow you? Or is it that you need to use my mother as the bargaining chip? And there it was, out loud, in the street. Nobody answered her, because the answer was arithmetic, and everybody in that street had already done it, and so had I. Here, half a bucket for an entire family. There, a bucket each. The Grand Elder watched his crowd start to shuffle and said, "A sharp-tongued brat." Then Sovereign Leaf came out, gray, bleeding through the bandage, holding the doorframe. She looked at the 13 men standing between her and everyone she had ever fed, and she found she had nothing to say to the other 300 except this. I'm injured, so it's understandable you're all worried. Go back now. Let's pretend today's events never happened. Nobody moved, and one voice out of the middle of the crowd said the truest thing anyone said that night. I'm not going back. There won't be any water to drink if I go back. She landed exactly one hit, and it was a good one. She asked the Grand Elder why, if he was so concerned about her exhaustion, his own household was swimming in water. He gave her the answer he'd had ready for years. I did it to study plants that can grow outdoors. Then she ran out of options, so she started pulling water out of the air, with a hole in her stomach, and offered to take as many of them with her as she could. The Elder shrieked that she was a madman, and the courtyard emptied in about 9 seconds. From a safe distance, he gave the order. Surround this place. Wait until dawn, when the 1,000 trees people arrive. She told her daughter to get ready. She'd cut a path out. She'd stay behind and hold it. Fayon said no and started crying and said no. Again, and a voice came down off the roof. Oh dear, it seems I've arrived just in time. A man in a white robe, sitting on the ridge tiles with his chin on his hands. A masked woman on one side, a woman with her entire head wrapped in cloth on the other. Zhao Hu looked up at me and made a professional assessment that he later told me kept him awake for a week, more dangerous than a mid-tier ferocious beast. I dropped into the yard. Do you need me to deal with them? Just give me some beast crystal. No need. She was still holding the doorframe. You can only solve it temporarily, not permanently. She knew exactly what tonight had proved, so I asked her the question I'd come to ask. Would you like to go to Zhuanwu City? She asked the only thing she cared about. If Fayan and I join Zhuanwu City, what will we need to do? Because 1,000 Trees wanted the 2 of them for their blood, and she would have died in that courtyard before she let that happen. And she needed to know whether she was choosing a different cage or a different owner. That's up to you to decide, I said. I won't force you to do anything. She stared at me. So much freedom? Isn't freedom good? No, she said. It's too good. Then Zhao Hu knelt down in the dirt with his shield still on his arm and asked to come. Him, his dozen, and their families, about 50 people, the first citizens of Zhuanwu City. Sovereign Leaf's plan was better than mine. She'd pretend to accept the merger so nobody arrested Zhao Hu's wives and children in the night, walk everyone calmly out to the tribe gate at dawn, and be collected there in the open. Then she sent every beast crystal she owned ahead with her daughter. On the walk home, Maylene finally said the thing she'd been carrying for an hour. 50 people won't fit on 1,000 square meters. Little black tortoise, I said, grows up very quickly too. At home, I poured out the Elder's crystals. 86,210 points, bringing me to 141,000. I spent 110,000 of it in one go. Rock armor turtle, 4 to 6. The talent that came back was Earth Rock, tenfold lightness and heaviness. Weight itself, multiplied or cancelled, on anything I can touch. And the feedback nearly killed me. I'd been enjoying these. A warm current, a little stretch, thank you very much. This one put me on the floor, veins standing out everywhere. My whole body went red. Muscle tearing and regrowing over and over, and the bones, I don't have a better description than this, felt like there were insects inside them. 20 minutes. Xiaolin cried through most of it. Mei-Lin held her. Li Ming crouched down beside me while I was still shaking, and examined me with the clinical detachment of a woman inspecting a very interesting rock. "It is the strength of the 7th level," she announced. My numbers came up over 100 in every single dimension. 109, 103, 105, 120 spirit. Lifespan, 2,650. Then somebody asked what had just happened, and I gave them the lie I've been using ever since. My awakened ability is to use beast crystals to evolve the beasts I tame, and then I receive some feedback from them. Which is true, it's just not all of it, and it isn't an awakener. Then we all went outside and looked at our house. Little Black Tortoise was 330 meters long, 300 wide, nearly 100 meters tall. "Our new home," Mei-Lin said, in a completely flat voice, "is a moving beast. I spent another 111,000 on the tea tree, 3 to 6, 16 meters tall, a trunk 2 people couldn't get their arms around. Starshine Domain now fired 6 times a day instead of twice, and picked up air purification and soil improvement on the way, which meant the air on that shell stopped smelling like the rest of the world. Xiaolin's only complaint was that it was now too tall to pick. So climb up and pick it. A childhood without climbing trees isn't a complete childhood." Mei-Lin thought about that for a second and quietly decided she was owed a climb of her own. Then I built a city before lunch. 10-meter square cleared, 5-meter stone pool, cut for the crystal fish with a channel running out to a public well. The house slid across my shell to the foot of the tea tree, using earth rock manipulation to move the ground and tenfold lightness to make the house weigh nothing, which together works exactly like pushing a boat across still water. Then a wall around the entire rim of my shell, 4 meters high, 2 thick, then rows of stone houses coming up out of the ground. And then, last, I lifted the whole central plantation 4 meters, so that it stood over everything like an island. The highlands, for the core. The ring below, for everyone else. I'm aware of what that is. I built a class system out of rock in about 40 minutes, and I'd do it again. Because a city with no visible center is a camp with better housing. Mei-Lin and Li Ming ran out of reactions somewhere around the wall, and just started carrying saplings up the steps in silence. "Is he always this dramatic?" At dawn, at the tribe gate, the Grand Elder asked Sovereign Leaf why she'd changed her mind. "I'm thinking of taking over Thousand Trees tribe," she said pleasantly. "What do you think?" You could watch the color leave him, because the new Thousand Trees chief is famously clinically paranoid, and that sentence in the wrong ear ends careers. Then, sweetly, "Elder, I heard your house was burgled, and all the valuables were taken. You must take care of yourself. Don't get so angry that you kick the bucket and die. Beat. If you have something happy to share, do tell us. Did you catch the thief?" He spat blood and fainted in the road. Lan Xing stood there taking mental notes at a speed I could hear. "That's how you insult someone. You don't have to shriek like a fishwife at all. If you anger someone stronger than you," her mother explained on the walk, "you deserve to get beaten up. But he can't win an argument with you, and he can't win a fight with you. So you reap double the happiness." Fei Yan wrote that down and resolved to become strong enough to both roast people and set them on fire. "Also, you need to learn to be more elegant. If you're always this unruly, no one will dare to marry you. I'm still too young." "Young? You're 17. You're practically an old maid." For the record, Lan Hua and her twin sister were, in their day, the 2 little devils of that tribe, unbeatable and insufferable. Something happened somewhere in there that turned one of them into the elegant version. The Thousand Trees delegation arrived on schedule. Rui, a cheetah speed mutant angling for a promotion, and a man named Kai with a loose mouth. Kai thought his chief was getting married. Rui knew better. The leader is after that woman's bloodline. It's for the next generation. As for whether she'll ever be anyone's wife, that's another story. They walked straight past the Grand Elder without looking at him, and he understood, with a lurch, that in this deal, he was the add-on item. "Welcome," Lan Hua said. "Are you taking this old woman back to be used as a water-producing tool? Or do you misunderstand? Is it my bloodline the Thousand Trees tribe wants?" Rui's pupils went brown and vertical. "You're seriously injured," he said, and it wasn't even cruel, just accurate. "You can't touch me. How will you know if you don't try?" And then from somewhere in the crowd, "Look, isn't there a hill moving over there?" That was me, 100 meters of hill, walking on the Yuetan tribe. A savage beast! How could an ancient savage beast appear here? The gate dissolved. 10,000 people, all at once, in every direction. The Grand Elder went down under his own people and lay there screaming for someone to come back and carry him, which nobody did. Lan Hua couldn't walk. She wouldn't let her daughter carry her because her daughter would be caught too. Feiyan refused to leave. Feiyan, her mother said, watching the foot come up, it seems we won't be able to reach Xuanwu City. The foot came down. The wind of it knocked them both sideways. And it stopped. 10 seconds. 20. And a voice from the top, extremely cheerful. Hey, Sovereign Leaf, Lan Xing, I've come to pick you up. I dropped 100 meters into the dust in front of them, straightened my robe, and winked. How about this welcoming ceremony? Wei Feng, she said, you are such a bastard. She was laughing while she said it. She'd genuinely been saying goodbye. I turned to the cheetah mutant. Do you have a problem with the pickup? No, no problem. There's absolutely no problem. Zhao Hu's dozen came running with their families and their bundles, and Sovereign Leaf's legs went numb again, entirely on schedule, and she got carried up the stairs a second time while mouthing something extremely smug over my shoulder at the girls behind me. 50-odd people went up onto my shell, and I walked my turtle away. One detail I did not weigh at the time, 7 or 8 figures peeled off out of that crowd and followed us. Every tribe has rats like that, Mei Lin said. They're either stealing or gathering intelligence. Up on the wall, 50 people looked across at my highlands, 16 meters of tree, an acre of green. So beautiful. That's incredible. A miracle. Zhao Hu had been told by old men, when he was a boy, that trees used to be green. He'd filed it under things old men say. Houses were handed out one per family. The streets were clean because they were 40 minutes old. There was no stench because there was nothing yet to stink, and because a 16-meter tree was scrubbing the air 6 times a day. Feiyan came running back breathless with an urgent report. All the houses here are the same. Do you like it? Of course I like it. Everything looks so clean. And Lan Hua, being carried up the steps for the 3rd time in 2 days, looked at the green and said quietly, mostly to herself, could this be the place? Yes, I said. This is Xuanwu City. I didn't disappoint you, did I? Breakfast the next morning was tomato soup, roast meat, and a toast. Today we welcome Sovereign Leaf, Lan Xing, and Li Ming to Xuanwu City. Just call me Wei Feng. She put her cup down. Then you can call me Lan Hua. A pause. Please don't call me Sovereign Leaf. Sovereign Leaf was the cage. Lan Hua was a name she hadn't been allowed to be for about 15 years. Mei Lin ate that meal by flipping her mask up 1 centimeter and posting food under it, because she was not going to risk scaring off 50 brand new citizens on day 1. And Li Ming ate through her bandages and only worked out somewhere around the 2nd cup that she had. At some point in the last 36 hours, joined a city. Wasn't she supposed to be researching secret medicine? The goal was simple, and I said it out loud at that table. Beast crystals, to grow my turtle, to have more land. The nearest market was 10 Floor City, 9 days out. A richer one was 23 days out, 10 floor it was. Our product line was tea, which we couldn't sell much of. Trade too much and it'll attract the attention of some 7th tier expert. And cabbage, which is a rich man's food. Neither of them scales. Then the woman with the bandaged head said, quietly into her soup, water. We can sell water. In a world where water is the currency, we own the thing that makes it. And Lan Hua found her own feet in a single sentence. Wei Feng, you should bring out the rules of Xuanwu City. Without rules, there can be no order. So I handed out jobs. Lan Hua, draft the laws, and teach the city lord to read. I haven't used it in so long, I said, straight-faced, that I've forgotten most of it. I had heard Mei Lin use that exact line 2 days earlier, and I want it noted that I stole it deliberately. Mei Lin and Xiao Lin, also literacy, because you cannot run a city by having 2 people explain every policy to everybody else face to face. Lan Xing, practice your fire by smelting iron, melt down the looted swords. Start with a big wok, because I wanted a wok. Li Ming, a private research institute. Zhao Hu and his men, wall guard and patrols, which was the seat of an actual army. And Lan Hua drew her own line before I could, hard, in front of everybody. Her men obey the city lord, not her. And if any of them ever forget that, she'll drive them out herself. Don't worry, she said. I'm not as easy to talk to as you think. I can tell. Mei brought her 13-year-old daughter Zhao Mei up the steps to be trained and delivered the entire curriculum on the walk. No place tolerates idlers. You must find something to do, even if it's something completely meaningless. Keep your eyes sharp, your mouth shut tight, and your mind quick. And above all, those girls up on my highlands are not maids. Do not ever make that mistake about their status. Lan Hua, meanwhile, refused to be waited on at all. Even the city lord has no one to serve him. How can you expect me to enjoy being served? Which is not modesty. That is a woman who knows that the day my people see her being served, they start measuring her against me. Li Ming got her institute, a bedroom next door she has still barely used, and the full tier 1 to 5 formulas. It's a level 1 to 5 enhanced secret medicine, she confirmed, holding all 36 hides at once. She wanted to fold Angel's tears into them and build an actual cure. I told her the next drop was going into Lan Hua's wound. And there's another one in 2 days. Isn't it supposed to take 10 days? I can also gather Angel's tears. She looked at me with an expression I can only describe as scientific hunger. She wanted to study me. She was not subtle about it, and she has never once apologized for it. Then Mei offered to serve the city lord, and I watched Shaolin go white, because cooking my food, cleaning my room, and washing my clothes was the only thing she had. She isn't strong like the white-haired one. She can't fight like the red-haired one. She isn't clever like her words, that old woman. So she keeps the job, and I put Mei under her to teach her how to actually run a household, with Zhao Mei as her first subordinate. That had always been the plan. The girl who ends up running the city lord's entire house. Don't try to do everything yourself, and don't forget you also have to train and learn to write. Yay, I'll do it seriously. Mei Lin spent that afternoon firing arrows straight up and splitting the first one's tail with the second, and then ran out of arrows again, which is a recurring problem in her life. Then she told me she was leaving in the morning, 2 more of her companions, 5 days out, in the opposite direction from 10 Floor City. They needed to know about Angel's Wing. They needed to know Li Ming was alive. Of course I'll come back, she said, to a question I hadn't asked. I will come back. It's not like I'm leaving and never coming back. You're reluctant to leave, aren't you? She looked at the sky for a while. Rendezvous, 10 Floor City, 10 days. I evolved Angel's Wing from 1 to 5 that night, 11,110 points. And the plant did something I didn't expect. It split. The main flower's 2 petal wings became 2.5 pairs, and 4 more buds opened along the stem. 5 angel's wings on 1 plant, 1 at every level from 1 to 5, a new pair of wings every 2 levels, 129, 123, 125, 140 spirit, lifespan 2,950. 20,000 points left, which meant I was broke again. I looked at the root for a long time, wondering whether it could be split and farmed. A simplified panacea, mass-produced, a drop for every fever in the city. And then decided not to risk killing the only one in existence on a hunch. Second drop went into Mei Lin off my fingertip. The crimson lines flared and then faded back further than they had the first time. Still not a cure, but the numbers had changed completely. 1 drop now holds the infection for about 18 months instead of 2, and the flowers refill in 5 days instead of 10. 5 flowers, 5 drops. Every 5 days. She hugged me without deciding to, and let go 3 seconds later in absolute horror. I opened my arms. I can let you hug me again? She left the room at speed. The real problem was storage. We had no way to keep a drop of the most valuable substance on the continent. Our entire national reserve was a metal lunchbox with a lid. Our family is so poor, I said, that we couldn't even find containers with lids. Zhao Hu came up the steps the next morning, visibly coached by his wife, to ask a favor. The families had brought almost no food. Could his men go hunt? He was expecting the Yue Tan model, where hunters bring the kill to the Lord and the Lord decides who eats. Instead, I said I'd come along and asked for firewood too, and started thinking about money, because here's the thing I was not going to do. I was not going to hand out food, hire the residents, pay them wages, let them buy the supplies back. Nobody gets fed for free because free feeds parasites, and a city of parasites eats itself in a season. I shelved it for a week because I didn't yet have enough work to pay for. Lan Hua stayed to hold the city. 1 drop of Angel's tears had taken her from a serious wound to a minor one, not to healthy. Mei Lin was ordered to stay in and make arrows. Fei Yan got permission from her mother with 1 condition attached. You have to listen to Wei Feng. Shaolin said nothing at all and looked sick with worry. Don't worry, I said. I'll be back with a full catch. 17 hunters, a dead gray forest. 4:30 in the afternoon by the watch on my wrist, which Fei Yan stared at for a solid minute. Tiny needles moving around inside a shiny disc, before asking why I didn't simply look at the sky. 2 hours and nothing. So I explained why, because they had all noticed, and none of them had words for it. The food chain here has no bottom, no plants, so no herbivores. No herbivores, so almost no predators. What's left is insects, small things, and whatever managed to evolve sideways into something that doesn't need any of it. Then the back of my neck told me something was watching. Careful! I grabbed Fei Yan and jumped 5 meters as the ground came apart. 9-section magic worm. Segments like stacked tires, a mouth that opens in 4 directions, and thorn tentacles. Low-grade mid-tier, which they reckon is equal to a 4th-tier enhancer. The Yue Tan hunting team once killed one of these. It cost them 20 men. Silk lines went out and pinned it, and it snapped the dead trees I'd anchored them to. Then, little K came down on it. Hardened scales flowing 3 colors, one claw straight through the carapace and into the skull, and it pulled the brain out and then presented it to me, like a cat, with a mouse, on a doormat. All right, I said. I overestimated this low-level, mid-tier, ferocious beast. We cut the beast crystal out and gave the rest to my lizard, and it did not fill the gaps between its teeth. Then my spider came over making a small, ingratiating noise. Fine. 10,000 points. Red ghost. Spider to level 5, 100 silk upgraded to 1,000 thread manipulation. Body up to 4 meters. Legs that rang like struck metal when I flicked one. The hunting team was standing there watching 2 monsters have a family moment. These, I told them, are the guardian spirit beasts of Zhuanwu City. Nobody argued with me. 7 meters of worm, enough meat to feed the city for days, and a shell that turned out to be armor stock. Zhao Hu whistled a bird call to gather the other teams, and I asked him what bird it was. Nobody alive has ever seen that bird, I asked. It's just the sound they make. They've been making it for generations. Feiyan mentioned Flying Bird City, where there are enormous birds, and even mutants who can fly. I filed that immediately because a walking city with no air cover is a very large blind man. Then I lifted 7 meters of corpse with a giant hand made of earth and stone, and Zhao Hu nodded to himself and thought, Earth Awakener, 6th tier at least. Feiyan, who had already watched me make water and shoot silk, did the arithmetic out loud and went pale. That's a 3-element awakener? There is a legend about those. There aren't supposed to be any. I did not correct her because the truth is stranger and considerably harder to sell. That's really, she said, insane. On the way home, Feiyan tried to catch a glowing insect off a dead branch, and it vanished into a hair-thin silk line, tamed it, then spent 1,100 points and took it to level 4. Shining beetle, palm-sized, a T-shaped horn like a rhinoceros beetle, a gourd-shaped dark red shell, and a tail like clear crystal with tentacles curling around inside it. Its ability was that it glowed. 20 watts roughly. I did not hide my disappointment well, and my beetle noticed, so it flew up higher, brightened until it hurt to look at, and fired a needle of light the width of a toothpick straight through a dead tree. Fist-sized hole, smoking edges, tree fell over. Laser attack? 141, 138, 136, 152 spirit. Lifespan, 3,260. Long-term note to self. Evolve that thing far enough, and I own a walking turret. Now, I have to tell you about something I didn't see. I only pieced this together months afterward, out of things 3 different people told me. I'm giving it to you in order. 2 nights earlier, 4 days walk behind us, in a sandstorm, a shadow was moving along the ground. Not a person casting a shadow moving, with a person somewhere inside it. Black hair, cat ears, crimson eyes, 17 years old. Chloe. Above her, dropping out of the dark on bat wings, a blonde girl with twin tails and small fangs, who can see in absolute darkness, Jing Fei, 20, a defector from Night Moon City and officially a traitor there. They belonged to something called Oasis, and they were carrying a stolen Thunder Spirit Beast egg, and their pursuers were 33 days behind them. Last time it had been 100 days. Last time, Jing Fei's wings got torn. Here is why Chloe left, 4 years ago, which her little sister has never known. The old camp chief had decided what she was for, and had started making arrangements about it, and she was 14, so she told Shaolin to dress as a boy, and she walked out into the wasteland alone, at night, with nothing. She should have been eaten by moonwolves inside a week. A crazy woman picked her up off the ground instead, which is a story for another time, and while I was 4 days ahead of her building a farm, she was back, and the camp was empty. Abandoned, she reckoned, about 10 days ago. She went through the rows of open doors, and the cold hearths, and the houses we demolished for roof beams, and she found her sister's shed, and in the middle of the floor there was a stone, carved into the shape of a rabbit-eared girl, lying face up. She picked up the stone I had carved and left there for her. Something tugged. A thread came out of the floor with it, and then a wooden box came out of the ground. She unrolled the drawing, and she read it exactly wrong. Because what's on that page is a long-faced girl with all her teeth showing, a cat person with 2 mismatched eyes, and a giant turtle with a grinning man standing on top of it. That bastard, she said, riding a ferocious beast. He dared to kidnap Shaolin. Jing Fei, who is not the strategist of that partnership but has functioning eyes, tried. Your sister couldn't wait for you anymore, so she went to look for you. With this man, I will find him. Chloe was rolling the drawing back up. And if anything has happened to my sister, I will kill him. Also, that's not a turtle. It looks like an 8-horned fang beast to me. She lost that argument too. And then both of them felt something coming and ran. And about 4 minutes later, 3 figures came into that empty camp out of the sandstorm. Wolf head, lion head, bear head, still hunting the egg. I flung a 7-meter corpse over my own city wall, on silk, and dropped it in the street a few meters from 3 waiting women. What a, Lan Hua said, twisted sense of humor. Indeed, said Mei Lin. Zhao Hu immediately claimed the butchering for his team, on the grounds that they had come home with no kill of their own, and he was damned if they were going to be waited on as well. I filed him, again, as talent worth growing. The shell turned out to be spirit artifact material. Lan Hua, it emerged, can make simple artifacts too. Feiyan got to hold the shining beetle and was taught the controls. Tap my shell 3 times for light, tap again for off. I fired the domain early that evening so they could seat a butcher, and a 16-meter tree lit an entire 300-meter shell like a stadium. Everyone came out to stand in the street and look at it. And under that light, the newly planted rows visibly sprouted, budded, and swelled in real time because a level 6 domain doesn't nudge plants along, it drags them. Mei Lin's professional concern was simple. At night, that light is visible for a very long way. Then we'll be careful, I said. The spider was already out on the rim, stringing silk and setting traps in the dark. Then Lan Hua taught me how spirit artifacts actually work, and it changed my life. Boil beast material, and it shrinks by half, gains about 30% hardness, and goes black, because the sticky filler inside it dissolves out. And inside every piece of beast material, there is a maze. Microscopic channels, pulse paths, some connected. Most of them dead ends. A master craftsman finds every connected path, links them, and wires the whole network to a beast crystal. That's an intermediate spirit artifact, and it can imitate an awakener's power. She spent 3 years on that step and never managed it. I poked a strand of spider silk into the cut face of my shell, and thousand-thread manipulation fed the entire maze back into my head at once, like 100 fingers reading 100 pages. I closed my eyes. Maybe 4 minutes. All right, all the pulse paths have been found. Silence in that room. It's not that difficult. I want to apologize, sincerely and belatedly, to both women present. I cut the arm guard as a jigsaw, so every piece's paths lined up with its neighbors, seated the worm's own beast crystal at the densest node, and Milan performed the recognition ceremony. A cut on her little finger, 1 bead of blood onto the crystal. White light ran through the whole guard, and red threaded through the white. It hummed once. First attempt. Using knowledge she had personally taught me that same evening. I'm a little tired, Lan Hua announced. I'm going back to sleep now, and left the room. An intermediate artifact weighs nothing at all for the person bound to it, and twice its real weight for anybody else. To rebind it, you pull the crystal, drain the blood out of the paths, and seed a new one. I handed it to Mylene because I can't use them. I close my fist on a 4th-tier artifact, and it stops being an artifact. And then the actual idea landed. I don't have to hunt for materials. I have a lizard with scales. I have a spider with a shell. Out on the rim of my shell, in the dark, both of them shivered at the same moment for no reason either of them could identify. Xiaolian woke me at dawn. There's a corpse. Is it hanging on the city wall? Thieves had come up the side at midnight. The spider had asked for orders, and a mostly asleep city lord had said 2 words. They were poisoned, wrapped, and hung on the wall by morning, which is not an instruction I gave and is a decision I have decided to respect. Xiaolin was not frightened by the bodies. What had frightened her was the possibility that there might be a fight inside the walls. Different world, different reflexes. I keep having to relearn that one. The shining beetle flew in that afternoon and handed me a smaller copy of itself. It breeds 1 a day. I named the children lantern beetles, because that's what they are. Living lamps, 1 per household, tap 3 times. The lighting problem for my entire city, solved by an insect with a hobby. Maylin came to the table the next morning, in the same hooded cloak she'd been wearing the night we met. I asked her 4 questions in a row. Food, water, weapons, enough of everything. Somewhere around the 4th one, her eyes went red, because nobody had ever run that particular checklist at her before. Parting gift. 1 lantern beetle, with care instructions. Glows about 8 campfire hours. Wrap the tail in cloth to switch it off. Unwrap it in daylight so it can feed. Give it starshine tea leaves. And after 3 days it knows your scent, I said. So if you lose it, it'll come and find you. She walked away, 3 steps, then turned around and came back and hugged me, with her cheek over my heart. I'm leaving. Then she ran before she couldn't. Xiaolin being physically removed from the wall afterward. Don't drag me away. I'm going back. Then we held the first reform meeting of Xuanwu City, which is a very grand way of describing 4 people at a table. Lan Hua was appointed secretary. Not good, then change the name. Female secretary? No, just secretary. And the reform itself was the contribution point system. The city lord's mansion issues missions. Nothing is handed out free anymore. Food is bought with points. The hunting team's patrols, watches, and hunts are their standing missions. The families get crafting missions, furniture, built to a supplied blueprint, because I had seen what they nailed together on their own, and I was not having it. A notice board goes up, and the secretary reads it out loud every morning, because almost nobody can read it. And then the hook that made the whole thing bite. Contribution points can be exchanged for the Tier 1 to 5 human enhancement secret medicine. Not food, not water, strength, permanent, personal, physical strength for sale to anybody at a published price. That is the moment I watch 50 people decide that they lived here. And then the other edge of it, because a carrot without a stick is a charity. If you do anything to betray Zhuanwu City, the consequences will be far more severe than simply being expelled. 5 days later, the economy was running. Cabinet, 3 points. Table, 2. Chair, 1. 1 point buys a pound of jerky. A tomato costs 30. A cabbage seed costs 10. And the mansion guarantees to buy the grown cabbage back, which meant a family could turn 10 points into a wage. A lantern beetle cost 500. Everybody laughed at that and walked away, which was the intended reaction. May invented the cooperative on day 3 without me, which is exactly what I wanted. Several families build one cabinet together and split the points. And I put a new item on the shelf every single day, so that the points never once lost value, because the fastest way to kill a young currency is to give people nothing to want. I watched May buy a cabbage seed with both hands cupped under the bag, like it was a live bird. She had wanted to own a plant her entire life, and I sold it to her for 10 points. And down in the ring, the girls started talking about being chosen as maids on my highlands, because it had become, and I mean this seriously, a career path. Feyan came home from her 5th day at the kiln, gray to the lips and walking like a drunk. I'd built it on my turtle's tail. She'd been burning her awakener ability all day, every day, heating iron and firing pottery, and had collapsed on each of the first 3 days. She handed her mother a clay jar she'd made herself, in the exact manner of a 5-year-old presenting a drawing. Lan Hua carried her up the steps on her back and needled her the entire way. When I was your age, I was already a 4th-tier awakener. I thought it was a thigh. And up on my highlands there had been hissing noises coming out of my new workshop for 5 days, because I had been in there the whole time making things out of scales plucked off my own animals. The door opened and nobody came out. Then I coughed, from behind them. 5 days of work, a full set of tricolored armor built out of Little Kai's own scales. Advanced spirit artifact, and it turns the wearer invisible. The lizard, incidentally, had been farmed for dozens of scales, plucked, healed with limb regeneration, fed evolution points, plucked again, and came out of that week looking profoundly betrayed. Good boy, there'll be a reward. I think, Feyan said very fast, that Great Lizard can totally endure it and could probably pluck off another 100 or so. I wasn't going to wear it. It was for a department I hadn't built yet. And the first name on that list was Maylin, because invisible armor also, incidentally, hides an infection. Dinner that night was stir-fried cabbage, tomato soup, and pan-fried meat patties in a wasteland. And nobody at that table commented on it, which is how you know a thing has become normal. Then I laid out the sales plan for 10 Floor City, quote a punishing price in public, refused to move on it, and then have my own people, masked, posing as thieves, offer the same goods at 10% off in a back alley, sell 10 days of stock in a single afternoon. Lan Hua looked at me for a long moment. Shady businessman. I took that as a compliment, and I still do. 5 days out from me, at the Maple Tribe, Maylene found her team's wall marks and followed them to a safe house, and then stopped dead in the alley outside it. Somebody was clapping. I got this from her in pieces over about a week, and she never once used the word afraid. He came out of the dark slowly. Half his face was like dried bark. The other half was crawling with crimson lines. A White Walker, 5th tier. Something between a human and a void ghost, with the strength of the ghost and just enough mind left to enjoy it. Her arrows rang off his forearm like she'd thrown gravel, and then he told her the thing that she had spent 4 years not knowing. Holy Sun City wiped out their tribes, all of them, and then arrived afterward as rescuers and took in the survivors and grieved with them. It was staged, the whole thing, because grateful orphans volunteer for infection trials and train hard and run missions without asking questions, and can be disposed of quietly at the end. Every family the 4 of them had, gone at the hands of the people who raised them. I want you to sit with that for a second, because I had to. Thanks to your defection, he said, we have the opportunity to evolve. He killed 5 patrolmen in about 5 seconds on his way through the street and licked his finger afterward. Then a very small fist came in from the side and put him through a wall. Serafina, pink hair, 1.55 meters. They ran. And the report Maylene got while running was worse than the fight. 4 White Walkers came. They'd been hunting the team for 10 days. Ruo Han, the only 5th tier of the 4 of them, had drawn 3 of them off deliberately, and then gone back to Holy Sun City, on purpose, to study the White Walkers. And If there turned out to be no other way, to become one, for revenge. Revenge, Maylene said. Who doesn't want revenge? She did not tell Serafina that angel's tears can't cure them. She wanted her happy for a few more days. I painted the banner myself, 2 white characters on black, Xuanwu. And that same evening, Li Ming sent word that the Tier 1 enhancement medicine worked, and that thanks to the herbs out of that stolen greenhouse, it was coming out at double the standard strength. 1 jar makes 10 doses. With enough herbs, she could make 100 doses a day. Tier 2 was days away. She delivered all of this while popping up from underneath a table mid-sentence, having not slept or washed in an unknown number of days, and then fell asleep face down on that same table while I was still talking. I carried her to the bedroom she has barely used and put a blanket on her. 10 bowls of green liquid the next morning. I drank first because you do not hand your people an untested drug. It was bitter enough to numb my tongue, and it did absolutely nothing to me. Confirmed? The medicine is useless to a man who levels up off beasts. Xiaolin drank hers, 3 seconds. Then she went scarlet and started burning, and sweated out streaks of grime that had been in her since before I met her. Xiaolin, 30 push-ups. She was doing them before she thought about it. Afterward, she sat on the floor with her ears flat and reported, "My body feels light and airy, like I can walk without any effort at all." Then she stood up and nearly put her head through my ceiling. And Lan Hua made a proposal she had clearly been carrying since the night her own tribe surrounded her house. A combat maid unit. Girls who clean my house and can hold my highlands. Zhao Mei drank a bowl on the spot. Xiaolin stayed their head, which she has never once let anyone forget. Maylene and Serafina reached 10th Floor City with something still hunting them. She looked at the wall, under 5 meters, and said out loud, in the voice of a woman whose standards have been permanently destroyed, 10th Floor City doesn't look like much. She lives on a 100-meter turtle now. There's no going back from that. Nobody checked anybody at the outer gate. The streets stank. And there were people sitting along the roadside at dawn, waiting for the work gang foreman to come and pick them, which is the sort of thing you stop seeing after a while, if you grew up with it. And the entire walk-in, Serafina interrogated her. Maylene, do you have someone you like? Silence. You two will never get anywhere. They won't accept monsters like us. No, he'll accept me. Isn't he afraid you're infected, or is he lying to you? Don't be scared of me. She stopped, then finished it anyway. He touched my cheek. Serafina walked the next 100 meters in silence, constructing a theory that made sense of this, and arrived at, the man must be a child. Only a child wouldn't know what the lines mean. Half a day out, a 10-floor hunting captain called Guo Qiang climbed a rock and watched a hill walk. 3 years ago, an ancient savage beast passed within sight of that city, and 30,000 people evacuated overnight. Then the sharp-eyed mutant in his squad spotted the thing that changed the entire conversation. There was a black flag on it, with 2 characters on it that nobody could read. Something was driving it. 10th Floor City is 10 factions, each with a 5- or 6-story building, which is where the name comes from, and which tells you everything about the ambition of the place. Their old city lord vanished 3 years ago. The young lord had stopped caring. She won't abandon everyone, Guo Qiang said, riding back. He was mostly saying it to himself. I stopped half a kilometer out. That was deliberate. 100 meters of walking mountain looking down on 30,000 people, whose tallest building is 15 meters, is not a negotiation, it's a threat. And I wanted to sell things. I could have taken that city. I want to be honest with you about that because it's the sort of thing that's easy to leave out. I had the means, and it would have been quick. I didn't, because I'd have had to live afterward with a man who does that. Lan Hua came down as my representative, because Xiaolin would have hidden behind me, and Feian would have been talked out of 3 state secrets inside 10 minutes. 10th Floor City's response to a monster at the gate was to shut the gate, shout at each other, and send nobody. At the round table, there were 10 seats and 3 days of deadlock, and the actual business of that morning was expelling Tang Ruo. Barnaby, master of the 1st floor, put it politely. The Yai family no longer has a single 6th-tier expert. Her continued presence damages the prestige of the 10th floor. The other 9 had already agreed. Here's her story, and I want you to have it before she walks into this. The head of the Yai family disappeared 3 years ago and left 5 sons and 3 daughters. Over the following 3 years, all 8 of them died. One after another. Only Tang Ruo is left. 5th tier, green eyes. 20-something, and going through the motions of a life the way you'd operate machinery you didn't build. Leaving that conference means being purged. Leaving the city means being robbed on the road inside 2 days. And then, Guo Qiang burst in with the news about the walking hill, and Barnaby suddenly discovered a use for her. Tang Ruo, go ahead, smiling. If this matter is handled well, then you won't have to withdraw. So she walked out to meet a monster, because there wasn't another door. Guo Qiang followed her. You still have a wife and children, she told him. As a retainer of the young lord, he said, it is my duty. I was going to go down myself. Lan Hua stopped me at the top of the stairs. As the lord of our city, you cannot lower yourself to do such a thing. Somebody in that operation had to guard my dignity, and it was very obviously never going to be me. She rode a stone platform down 500 meters, with Zhao Hu's guard behind her, and greeted a terrified woman with a smile. We're from Xuanwu City. We mean no harm. We'd like to trade. Barnaby's counteroffer came back from behind the walls. A banquet tonight, outside the city, and everyone brings their own food, in case of poison. Lan Hua accepted instantly, because it saved us the catering. Meanwhile, Maylene and Serafina had spent 2 days laying decoy trails across 10-floor city, including cutting off lengths of their own hair for bait. And the White Walker kept finding them anyway, because tracking is what it does. Damn it, Serafina said, sawing off another handful. If this keeps up, I'm going to lose all my hair. She wanted to fight it 3-on-1. Maylene killed that idea in one sentence. And then the real problem arrived, which was that Li Ming was coming to this city, in public, on a stone platform, and that thing knew her scent too. Which meant they had to bring me into it, kill it and burn it, so that Holy Sun City never learns where any of them went. There's an accomplice, Serafina said, when Maylene explained who she'd be asking. His strength is at least at the 6th level. You should have said so earlier. Barnaby turned out to be half a step off 6th tier, which made him the strongest man in that city. He looked at me, made an estimate somewhere between peak 6th and 7th, and looked away first. Then the table did the rest of the talking for me. We brought 10 dishes, stir-fried pork finished with starshine tea, stir-fried cabbage with a pepper Xiaolin had found and identified herself, and which she was unbearable about for a week. They brought slabs of roast meat and a pot of stew, and the entire hide shed filled up with the smell of green vegetables. Barnaby could not make himself eat his own food. He sat there with his own meat in front of him and could not do it. Is the food tonight not to your liking? Deals in order. 20 white snakes for 2 cabbages. He thought he was fleecing me. I needed exactly 1 white snake, because a species can only be tamed once, which is, incidentally, why I don't own a herd of turtles, and the other 19 were seed stock for a forest I intended to have in 3 years. 1 triangular sheep for 1 cabbage, and then the actual product, cabbage seedlings. 1 bolt of cloth each, or 12 elementary intermediate beast crystals each, 300 available. Plus, a stall outside our gate, selling water, pottery, and greens. Tang Ruo said nothing for the entire meal. Her family's plantation had died the year her water ration was halved. On the way out, Lan Hua slowed a half-step as she passed Tang Ruo and gave her a look and a small smile that meant absolutely nothing at all, and let 9 watching faction heads invent an entire secret arrangement for themselves. It's precisely because she's not doing well that it attracts more attention, she explained afterward. Once there is doubt, there will be contact. That's far more convincing than having to go to someone yourself. Behind us, Xiaolin was quietly grinding her teeth about that old lady, and Zhao Mei had both hands over her own ears. Then, a voice out of the dark. Maylene was back, with Serafina, who spent the entire introduction standing behind her and inspecting me for the catch. A man like that could have anyone. Why would he take an infected one? Verdict: keep watching. Then we stepped up onto the wall, and the star domain fired, and 300 meters of shell lit up green in front of 30,000 people. It's a tree. I think I see a tree. A tree that can glow? 1 tree like that is worth 10,000 seedlings. Faction heads climbed onto their own walls to look. Barnaby didn't move at all. He was going to let the greedy men of his city probe it first, and learn Xuanwu City's real strength from how badly they died. Serafina put both hands over her mouth. Have I arrived in a fairyland? And Maylene, quietly, not to her. To me, this place is already paradise. We're being tracked by a monster, Maylene told me. We think it'll follow us here tonight. 5th tier. Its defense is extremely strong. You have to keep it here, or it'll cause much bigger trouble. Don't worry. I looked out at a city with its lamps going out 1 street at a time. There might be more than 1 uninvited guest tonight. Some people think it's easy to get up here. It's much harder to get down. The White Walker came up my turtle's leg at midnight with a lock of pink hair in his fist. 10 meters behind him, a treasure hunter crew led by a 5th tier enhancer named Sun Ren, who sells what he can't steal as intelligence. At the top, the White Walker stopped. No guards. Anywhere. On a 15-meter wall, and the scent was right here, and there was nobody in it. 3 meters away, 2 women in invisible armor were finding out what their new toys could do. Serafina's first punch, the same punch that had bounced off him in an alley 4 days earlier, folded him over the crenellations. Her second one, in exactly the same spot, rolled him down the inside of the wall, coughing blood. Then 2 arrows came out of the dark. The first through an eye, the second split the first one's fletching and went into the brain behind it. He died without ever seeing a single person. Last words, which I've thought about since. You think you can escape? more White Walkers will come. I filed that one. He turned out to be right. Sunren's crew watched that entire sequence from outside my wall, held a very short meeting, decided against it, and climbed back down, and turned around into the face of an 8-meter lizard that had been walking behind them the whole time. Serafina spent the rest of that night working the outer streets, putting climbers down one at a time with a fist to the stomach, and then decloaking to gloat about it. This is the 5th one. A masked 5th-tier awakener lay on the ground in his own vomit, recognized the armor as a high-grade artifact, and gave up on running when a scream came from further down the street. By dawn, we had 32 prisoners in one room, including Sun Ren, described in the trade as a rising star among treasure hunters, and a woman called the Veil Weaver, a 5th-tier awakener who can wear anyone's face. She proposed a mass escape and got refused. By everybody. Twice. You probably haven't seen that elusive ghost, have you? They'd all met little Kai. One of them had resisted, and the rest had watched what happened. She tried to start it anyway on the walk out, got one syllable into "everybody run," and turned around into my lizard's face. I'm the one who's calling out. "Good evening, everyone." I looked over the room, felt 2 5th-tier auras in it, and thought, 2 pretty good fish. Hang them up. Just hang them on Little Black Tortoise and let them get some fresh air. The armor got its name that night. Ghost armor, and Serafina did some arithmetic privately that I only heard about much later. She sat down and did the arithmetic on me, and I want you to hear it in her voice rather than mine. This man learned intermediate artifact craft in 1 day. He produced 2 advanced sets in 10. He being me, obviously. I'm enjoying this. And he can resize them on the spot. Serafina woke up the next morning being used as a body pillow by Li Ming, which is apparently a normal Tuesday for those two. Then she went outside and looked up at 16 meters of glowing tree and started worrying properly. If word of that reaches a real city, they don't send a merchant, they send a hunting team. And then Maylene let something slip. She had already taken Angel's tears. Serafina looked at her friend's face, where the crimson lines were still very clearly present, and went white, and drew the only conclusion available. There's no cure. Her friend has simply decided to spend her last month somewhere beautiful. She didn't say any of that out loud. She just went very quiet for the rest of the day. I was still asleep when Barnaby arrived at dawn to open trade negotiations and found 32 people hanging off the side of my city in silk cocoons with their mouths sealed. "It seems," he said after a while, "our probing last night went wrong." Then I opened my stall, a bucket of water, 1 low-grade crystal, a pottery bowl, 1, a tomato, 1 elementary intermediate, a cabbage seedling, 12, a tomato seedling, 100. Barnaby's play was obvious and correct. Hold the line, let nobody buy, and squeeze the price down over 3 days. 10 factions, 1 cartel, no rush. And then Tang Ro walked through the middle of it and set it on fire. She announced loudly to everyone that she'd paid 11 each by taking 100 at once, that the tea tree's leaves extend your life, and that there were only about 200 seedlings left. The cartel lasted 4 seconds. Final terms, 30-plus seedlings, 1 crystal off each. 100-plus, and we throw in a little starshine tea. Everything sold out, with a great deal held back in the warehouse, because nothing on this earth moves a price like the last one. Then Tang Ruo came back that night with her actual business, whispered. She wanted her entire faction, 500 people, walked out of 10-floor city alive. And she recited the price from memory without hesitating once. 3 intermediate medium crystals, 17 intermediate lower, 230 elementary upper, 500 elementary medium, which I converted in my head, on the spot, to roughly 700,000 evolution points. I stripped an entire tribe for 200,000. "Where are you going?" "Holy Sun City." Behind me, 2 sets of pupils shrank at the same moment. I told her yes, on one condition. She plays her part in my price play first. Which brings me to the plan I am still quite proud of. That night, Lan Hua went over the wall in a hooded cloak with a pack on her back, as a thief, selling starshine tea and seedlings at a discount to the faction heads who'd missed out. And Maylene played the guard chasing her through the dark streets, and the entire staged robbery doubled as the diversion covering Tang Ruo's evacuation. "Just treat it as a game," I told her. "Don't blame me if you mess this up." Serafina, watching a masked woman go over a wall, "She looks kind of familiar." "It's not that she looks like her," Maylene said. "She is Sovereign Leaf." Meanwhile, the thieves' families arrived at the foot of my shell to collect corpses. Old women, children, 1 heavily pregnant wife. The thieves up there aren't dead yet. You could hear the relief go through that crowd. Of course he's not dead, but he will be soon. Then the offer? Beast Crystal buys off the death sentence. It does not buy off the sentence. Several years of labor in Xuanwu City, and if you'd rather not be apart for years, come along. We leave tomorrow. Every single family went home to pack. Let me be honest about what that was, because it looked like mercy, and I want the record straight. Their savings confiscated. 32 skilled fighters, the weakest of them a second-tier enhancer, put to work on the jobs I don't want my own people doing, and their families moved aboard, where they function as hostages that look exactly like a kindness. My second wave of citizens. Above them, the hanging thieves watched their loved ones walk away cheerfully and could not understand what was happening. Why not invite Tang Ruo to join Zhuanwu City? Lan Hua asked. I just don't understand her. And she didn't ask the question she wanted to, which was, did you understand me? So I answered it anyway. A person who willingly becomes a water-producing doll. Isn't it easy to understand someone as stupid as that? I'm just carrying on the responsibilities of the previous generation. Then she heard herself say it. You haven't awakened some kind of mind-reading ability, have you? Your expression is too easy to understand. If you don't believe me, ask the others. Shaolin immediately from the doorway. She's just a clumsy auntie. The whole hall converted at once. 1,185,960 evolution points. I bought a goat. The triangular sheep went to level 5 and became a 6-horned magic goat, 2 meters tall, 3 long black wool, 6 spiral horns, and a small extra one on its nose. Talent. Impact reflection. It demonstrated by puffing its wool into a ball and ricocheting off the floor, the ceiling, and all 4 walls of my hall like a rubber ball fired out of a cannon, until I lassoed it out of the air with silk. I think, I said, holding it, it would be better to call it Spring Ball Crash. Zhaolin surveyed the wreckage of a room she had cleaned that morning. Wei Feng, can we slaughter this goat and eat it? Long-term value, which she did not want to hear about. Wool woven into cloth is a garment that reflects impact. Then the biggest of the white snakes, also to level 5. Ice nether serpent, 8 meters, as thick through as a person. Snow white, with scales as translucent as crystal, laying frost on everything it crossed. Talent. Frost manipulation, which was a surprise. I'd been expecting poison. 153, 149, 148, 171 spirit. Lifespan, 3,550. And then it lay down in my hall, and within about 4 minutes, the floor iced over, the table legs iced over, and the smallest maid in the room iced over. That isn't an attack. That's just what it is. So I cut a cold store into the rock behind my highlands, serpent in the middle chamber, meat lockers on both sides, a second private one for the mansion, and I pried a few scales off it and cut them into access tokens so that anyone carrying one gets ignored instead of frozen. And if anyone brings scales in, I told it, freeze them for me. The 12 thieves' families were given houses, same as anyone else. The pregnant woman could not process it. But isn't my husband a sinner? He atones for his sins, I said. You live yours. Lan Hua understood the design of that exactly and said nothing because she also understood that it was better than any alternative on offer in that world. The thieves with family aboard were cut loose and sent home to them. The 20 with nobody got locked up. Sunren went gray because years here meant years away from a wife and a daughter he is, by all accounts, ridiculous about. The Veil Weaver protested that she'd only climbed up out of curiosity. You're not the first person to say something like that. I looked around my own hall. The people around me all said they came up out of curiosity. Their sentence? Join the 2nd Special Department. Complete a set number of missions. Walk free. Then Lan Hua walked into the 1st floor Lord's building as a 6th-tier thief with a personal grudge against the Zhuanwu City Lord. Seedlings at 10 crystals, 2 under the official price, and the last of the Starshine tea for 100 intermediate superior. Barnaby sent runners to verify that the other 9 had all bought heavily. They had. He was the only one who'd been left out of a boom he had personally engineered. He took all 300 seedlings and the tea. And about 4 minutes after she left, Mayeline and Serafina decloaked in the middle of his hall as the city lord's secret guards, hunting the traitor who had stolen their lord's goods and sold them to him. He refused to hand the box back. They left him with a sentence to sleep on. You'd better pray you don't anger our adults, or you will be terrified. He stood in that hall for a long time afterward, working out whether the entire evening had been a pretext to attack 10-floor city. Everyone came aboard, and then I delivered the commotion. Rock armor turtle. 6 to 7. 1 million evolution points. The talent that came back was Earth Rock 20 times weight, and the feedback broke something in me and then rebuilt it, muscle tearing and knitting, bones cracking like hammered wood. Lan Hua physically put herself between me and the other girls to shield them from the pressure coming off my body, and my turtle roared. 1,200 meters long, over 800 wide, 500 meters tall, a mountain bellowing, swinging its head, 30 meters from the walls of 10-floor city. 30,000 people went out of that city in every direction at once. Barnaby personally ran for the far gate, and in the dark, on the far side, Tang Ruo walked 500 people out onto the road to Holy Sun City, and nobody in that city so much as glanced their way. Afterward, into the silence, I asked, "My plan to cover Tang Ruo's evacuation should be considered complete, right?" "Probably," said Mei Lin. "Incidentally, without that new weight talent, the footsteps alone would have shaken 10-floor city into rubble. It weighed 20 times less when it walked away than when it arrived." Serafina stood on the wall watching a city evacuate and asked, to nobody in particular, "Can somebody explain to me why you people accept all of this so quickly?" The pursuers behind Chloe had a name by then. 3 orcs. Out of 10,000 Demon City. 10 more days of running, and Jingfei turned out not to be a defector at all. She's the youngest princess of Night Moon City, which is a vampire city of high towers, and Chloe lured her out of it with a rumor she'd picked up from Oasis, that a sleeping princess there could modify plants. The rumor was false. The girl came anyway, because Chloe told her the outside world was beautiful, and she has been hunted ever since. "You have to take responsibility for me. I regret it. I can take you back right now." She asked for a mouthful of Chloe's blood, was refused, and was offered a rabbit instead. I want that on the record, because I have since been asked to supply the blood myself. Their destination was Holy Sun City, where 90% of any information on the continent can be bought if you can pay, which is a fact I have since made extensive use of myself. Chloe intended to buy my name, and then, on the road, they stopped a column of 500 refugees walking east in the dark. Have you ever seen a man riding a ferocious 8-horned fang beast? He's accompanied by a girl with long rabbit ears. Tang Ruo, who had watched exactly that man take her payment that morning, and who had just fled a mountain the size of a district, looked down at a child's drawing of a 7-meter boar with a grinning man on it, and said, "No." They missed each other by one word. New doctrine, delivered in the hall with Zhao Hu told to sit down, which is how a man finds out he's been promoted into management. We stop going to other people's cities. We make them come up here. A walled trading quarter, separate from where people live, so that a city can be visited without being entered. Security split 4 ways. The outer shell to the tamed beasts, outer city to Zhao Hu, the highlands to Mei Lin, and Serafina volunteered on the spot, because she'd taken the tears and would not take charity. And the trade quarter to Lan Hua and Feiyan, policed by the captured thieves. Will they listen? I'll make them listen to me. Next destination, Holy Sun City. 8 days. And under the table, Maylene pinched Serafina's leg rather than argue about it in front of everybody. Then, I rebuilt the city in an afternoon. The turtle shattered a 100-meter hill in about 4 seconds, and a wave of rock and soil rose up over my shell and blotted out the sky while the entire population stood in the streets and watched it come. Several of them wet themselves, and I have been reminded of it in company approximately once a month ever since. I have been told this repeatedly, usually by Feiyan, usually in company. Then I built. The wall went from 4 meters to 15, 6 thick, 10 at the crossings, with 4 gate towers, a Barbican quarter with a commercial street of 2-story shops for outsiders, 3-story residential blocks, 1 family per floor, farmland and orchards across everything left over, plus open ground held back for workshops that didn't exist yet, and a training field, a small square under my highlands to make speeches from. And my highlands raised to 16 meters in 3 tiers, offices below, a palace on top, and the tea tree walled into a private garden. I did the fine work myself by hand, because at that size my turtle's precision is 2 or 3 meters. It's a grown man trying to thread a needle wearing oven gloves. The little stone house swelled into a palace with thick pillars and side halls where the old rooms had been. Maylene was dazzled. Serafina was appalled. Wouldn't it be too luxurious to sleep in such a big house? Would I even be able to sleep? Zhao Mei was silently calculating how long my new floors take to clean, and Li Ming started wailing about her institute until she got inside and found the interior completely untouched. I'd only widened the walls and lifted the roof because I'm not a barbarian and because I know what happens if you move one of her jars. I came over to them at the end gray-faced and unsteady because I'd done every one of those calculations in my own head and got Lan Hua under one arm and Xiaolin under the other. The pool was too small, so I dug it 10 meters deep and 10 across, still filled too slowly. So, crystal fish, 3 to 6, 111,000 points. Water element control, the fish went to 4 meters. The pool filled in about a blink, and the overflow ran out into the channels and kept running. A city with permanent running water, in a world where water is the currency. Then it stuck its head out and complained that the pool was still too small, so I widened the middle to 15 meters, made it gorge-shaped, and gave it permission to swim out through the city's waterways whenever it wanted. Where does a crystal fish come from, incidentally? Nobody knows. Underground rivers, maybe. Or it falls out of the rain. I asked it directly. I don't know. I don't remember. And when everyone started speculating out loud about whether it lays eggs, it flicked its tail and put water in all four of our faces. Then the tree. Starshine tea tree, 6 to 7. Another million points, and it didn't just level, it mutated. Starry tea tree. Talent, star domain. 32 meters tall, an 8-meter trunk. Leaves the size of my palm carrying up to 7 green stars each. Its roots filled the entire highlands and then asked for more, so I ran them out under the whole shell. Star Domain now covers almost the entire back of that turtle. Adjustable range, adjustable speed, and a chance to permanently strengthen anything growing inside it, and it bears star fruit, which strengthens the human body. 201, 202, 207, 230 spirit. Lifespan, 4,010 years. Seraphina, looking up at it, the biggest living tree in Holy Sun City is 20 meters. Then Moylan came to the new study alone and took her mask off and told me the whole thing. Seraphina, Li Ming, and I are all from Holy Sun City. We are an assassination squad that Holy Sun City has trained since childhood. And then the rest. Awakeners are 1 in 10,000, mutants are 1 in 1,000, enhancers cost a fortune to make. So Holy Sun City infects ordinary children with void ghost infection, because the infection grants a power, and it guarantees their loyalty by destroying small tribes itself, and then arriving as the rescuers who take the orphans in, 50-plus children in her batch. Most of them died in training, or in the infection itself. And because burning through short-lived consumables is expensive, they went further and engineered the balance point between a human and a void ghost, the White Walkers. The 4 of them only found out because they were sent to hunt a defector, and the defector talked before she ran. My questions were all operational, which I think disappointed her slightly. How many White Walkers? Can any of the others be turned? And my conclusion, leave them alone for now. Because anybody who knows the truth and stays in that city is either hiding or waiting, and I don't yet know which. Be careful of Holy Sun City, she said. I will, and don't underestimate Zhuanwu City. Then I founded a department, Ghost Special Forces, Surveillance, Intelligence, Assassination, Ghost Armor as the uniform, Maylene and Seraphina as the first 2 members, named after what I used to be. I read the terms off a sheet of paper like a job advertisement. 4 days off in every 30, 1 drop of angel's tears, 100 grams of starshine tea, 30 gin of green vegetables. Seraphina, halfway down the list. Wait, why do I feel like you're seducing me? Pretty much, right? Do you want to join? Her actual hesitation was her dream. She wants to write adventure travelogues. She wants to be the person who saw things. Li Ming settled that one with her mouth full. What place can compare to the magic of Xuanwu City? We're not on an adventure now. She signed 2 days later. 27 men in the small square at dawn. The hunting team is going to be reformed. You will become professional soldiers. Your duty is to fight to protect Zhuanwu City, to protect your loved ones, and to protect our homeland. The Zhuanwu City Defense Army. 3 armies for 3 passes. Zhaohu, 1st Army, holding Shanhai Pass. Wuchang, 2 meters tall, 4th tier, blunt as a brick, 2nd Army. And the 3rd went to Lin Dao, the leader of the captured thieves, 4th tier, a criminal I had personally hung off the side of my own city 11 days earlier. Your identity is not a constraint. It's a motivation. Don't let me down. And then quietly, only to him. Your pregnant wife and your unborn child want a husband and a father they can be proud of. Barracks living. Leave by rota, uniforms being made, instructors coming, whom I intended to train personally, and one detail that killed every private plan every captain in that square had already started making. Squad membership is assigned by lottery. Nobody stacks a unit with his own people, not in my city. Plus the standing note, perform badly and I'll replace you. New notice board, new missions. And they were jobs now, not chores. Furniture workshop, 10 people. Pottery, 5. Decoration, 4. Blacksmith, chefs, 2 maids for the mansion. 10 waiters for Commercial Street. Points paid daily by output. Everyone shouted at once trying to claim a trade, and Zhao Mei, the only other literate person in the entire city, disappeared under the registration list. The houses were bigger now, and completely bare, on purpose. Because the point is not to hand a man a chair, the point is to sell him one he paid for with work I gave him. I taught a 4-meter spider to weave, staggered threads, pressed tight, not sticky. It produced a meter of cloth at roughly the speed of a machine, and the cloth was tough enough that an ordinary weapon wouldn't get through it. Seraphina watched a man praise a monster for its needlework in a warm and encouraging voice, and thought, privately, if I were that spider, I would tear this room apart. The design was a special forces cut, not a dress uniform, with coats and capes for the captains marked with the 2 characters on the back. Because when you deal with outsiders, you have to look like something. One unsolved problem, the silk comes out white, and dye does not yet exist. A note about my turtle, since people ask. It obeys me, nobody else. It sleeps like the dead. And at that size, it can no longer feel a human being standing on its shell any more than you can feel an ant through a blanket. One badly aimed instruction during that rebuild would have buried my entire city in a mudslide. So I classified it accordingly. Strategic weapon. Last resort. Never used unless the outcome is certain, and absolutely devastating when it is. The only public road up is a stair cut into my shell in a zigzag. 3 meters wide, half-meter rail, 500 meters of drop, and 3 fortress checkpoints on the way. The top one is Shanghai Pass, mountain and sea, for a black tortoise like a mountain and earth like an ocean, and also because I couldn't be bothered inventing something better. There are exactly 3 ways into Xuanwu City. Climb the cliff and meet my lizard and my spider, fall out of the sky, or pass all 3 gates. Standing at the top of that stair, one man could hold this against 10,000. Serafina walked down it, writing her travelogue as she went, and I had to grab her arm at the second switchback. That's when she admitted she keeps 2 versions, the true draft and the one other people will be allowed to read. The middle checkpoint hangs off a cliff face, hanging pavilion. Serafina wrote that one down instantly because a house suspended in midair will set the entire hunter community on fire. It's single iron rule, every weapon is surrendered there. The lowest is Heavenly Gate Tower, the Foreign Affairs Desk, where outsiders get vetted and issued a pass. Both captains immediately requested literate clerks. I agreed, smiling, because in Xuanwu City, every manager is eventually going to have to read or be retired. I had 9 years of compulsory education, and I am not surrendering that war to a wasteland. And I encourage Serafina's travelogue on purpose. It's advertising, it costs nothing, and every strong person it lures in arrives carrying beast crystals. Then, I went out and pulled up a forest. Thousands of threads into a stand of dead trees, rip them out with the earth talent, drop the weight to a 20th, and swing 1,000 logs through the air in one motion into a stack the size of a hill. 4 times. 2 hunting squads watch from the tree line. He is definitely a 7th tier awakener. Serafina drafted and redrafted that passage for 10 minutes and settled on. She was fortunate enough to witness a 7th level expert make a move, plucking 1,000 giant trees with a flick of his fingers. Over dinner, they recited the great goals of the hunter-explorer world for me, in order like a creed. Find the legendary underground world. Find out why every tree on the surface died. Find the legendary oasis. Find the legendary dragon. Find the tree of life. Plus 10-meter giants and beast-headed orcs, which turn out to be real, but we'll get there. The underground world theory is that there are humans living below with food and plants and animals, connected up by tunnels, and that the ferocious beasts that come up here are what they send us to eat. Also unsolved, what causes the acid rain, and books, it turns out, are worth more than 100,000 kilos of meat. They're traded or stolen, never bought, because a hand copy takes days. I sat there with a jaw working on that fact for a while. Then I found a wolf dying in a dead forest, 3 meters of gray-white animal, bleeding out, and still baring its fangs at anything that came within 4 steps. Its own pack had ambushed it while it was wounded and taken its throne. I tamed it. It started at level 3 all by itself, which no other animal I've met has done. 11,000 points took it to 5. Moonwolf King. 5 meters long, 3 tall, fur going snow white, and giving off a faint light of its own. Talent. Moon Knight Transformation. Once per night, and only at night, which I have not yet had a reason to use. And then it asked me for something. Not in words. It just looked at the tree line and then at me. You want to go back for revenge, reclaim the wolf pack, and then come back to me. It waited. Go! I'll wait for you to come to me with your family and your men. It howled once, lit up white, and went into the trees, and looked back exactly once at the edge of them. Zhao Hu's 9 men brought down an 8-horned fang beast that week, a boar the size of a house with 8-meter-long tusks, by baiting the charge and putting a spear through the neck. He was genuinely enormously proud for about 90 seconds. Then my lizard walked past carrying one, and then they came out of the tree line and found a dozen more stacked into a hill of meat and a dozen live ones bound in silk. Lindao's squad had watched me kill an entire herd with single threads through the skull and were still, in a technical sense, recovering. Ecology question, asked and answered that day. 8-horned fang beasts live on the dung of ferocious beasts, and an entire herd of them will follow one ancient savage beast around for years to get it. Which raises the obvious follow-up. What does an ancient savage beast eat? Nobody knows. The books say it grows a symbiotic organism and then eats it, which is thermodynamically the stupidest thing I've ever heard. The live young ones went to farmland. Livestock, not dinner. Meanwhile, at Holy Sun City, 100,000 people behind 15-meter walls, Ruo Han came back. Purple hair, purple eyes, fifth tier, the leader of the four of them. She had killed all three remaining White Walkers by herself, and then walked back into the city she'd escaped from. She dropped a message over a courtyard wall and waited in their old safe house. Her contact was Lan Fen. Long, wavy blue hair, a fox's face, and a kick fast enough to stop a drawn sword with her toes. Lan Fen also knows the truth. Lan Fen also wants revenge. And Lan Fen had a plan that Ruo Han walked directly into the middle of. Her cell had been waiting for one of their own members to run out of lifespan, so they could hand over a defector and buy their way into Holy Sun City's inner circle. And here was a real one. Who knew the truth? Delivering herself. You shouldn't have come back. Do it, as long as you can help us take our revenge. Ruo Han threw her sword down on the stones. I would die for my parents' cause. She took the kick standing. Lan Fen gave the order to lock her up, crying under her hood where her own people couldn't see. 10 days later, in 3 different places at the same moment, 3 women grabbed their own chests. Ruo Han's ability is called Dangerous Spy. She feeds her own danger level back to her 3 companions, permanently, whether she wants to or not. A twitching eyelid means trouble. A heart hammering that hard at that distance means she is dying. They came to borrow the ghost armor and run there on foot. If you run, I said, I might arrive at Holy Sun City before you. We were 2 days out, and I'd already told my turtle to stop holding back. As long as they're all right, we can save them. Don't forget we still have Angel's tears. To stop 3 women pacing holes in my floor for 2 days, I put them to work, pulling papyrus. I'd spent days selecting that plan out of everything on the farm for one purpose: paper. Because parchment is too precious to write on, and Xuanwu City was about to need schooling. There was already a paper-making operation running, staffed by people I'd trained personally, headed by an old parchment craftsman named Qin Bo, who had moved aboard for his son, one of the captured thieves, now a soldier. Come on, I told them. I'll show you one of the top 10 inventions of Xuanwu City's future. Farm numbers that month. Sweet potatoes harvestable every 5 days under star domain, and enormous. The warehouse was nearly full. Chips and pickles were being planned. And the one thing we did not have, at any price: salt. Holy Sun City's caravan brings it back from somewhere very far away, once every 30 days. Everyone who has ever tried to follow that caravan has disappeared. There is a salt mine somewhere out there, and I intend to own it. I wanted it then, and I want it now. The paper came out in grades, fine for the mansion's orders and drawings, rough, mass-produced, because cheap is the entire point. And one batch of pale yellow, reserved for a purpose that Qinbo could not fathom and that I declined to explain. I demoted the institute to the paper mill, incidentally, because the word institute is reserved. 2 reasons for paper: education, urgently. My own captains couldn't read. And books, because 1 book ought to fetch a beast crystal, worth 100,000 evolutions of points, and 10 books is another level 7 beast. 2 days earlier, over dinner, I had said to Lan Hua, with a completely straight face, I've noticed you have the most beautiful handwriting in all of Xuanwu City. And then, write every word you know onto a piece of clay. Backwards. She had been carving mirror image characters into clay blocks for 2 days without asking why. Maylin is the one who got it, looking at the paper in her hands. You wouldn't be thinking of using the words on those clay blocks to print them onto the paper, would you? Add ink, soot scraped off the paper mill's boiling pots and ground into a stick, and a brush of 8-horned fang beast tail hair. I'd wanted wolf hair. The Moon Wolf King was busy unifying every wolf pack in the region. I wrote 2 characters on a sheet. And the room went silent, because black that doesn't smudge, doesn't fade, and never has to be copied out again is not a stationary upgrade. It's a different civilization, movable type. I ordered tens of thousands of blocks fired, with Fayon baking them, and every book in that world is now printed in my secretary's handwriting. What's the first book? I'll write one myself. Textbooks. Because the transformation of a city's mind starts with what its children are handed on the first day. Then I sent 5 women to attack my own city. Li-Ming delivered the coma drug I'd asked for. Works by smell, by drinking, or through a wound, and only on Tier 3 and below. She considered it useless. I did not. She had also finished the Tier 2 enhancement medicine and forgotten to mention it. So had Serafina. Tonight I told them, you take our own 3 forts. Xiaolin came on her first real operation. Zhao Mei came because combat maids require combat. Fayon came and was banned from using fire. Hand signals I'd taught them. Cloth soaked in the drug. A kick behind the knee, a hand over the mouth, a chop to the neck, and then ink on every unconscious face with 1 line drawn across the throat, meaning, you are dead. Wang City's wall fell. Then Shanhai Pass, where the entire garrison was sitting around a fire with no sentries posted at all, and where Zhao Hu was dragged out of his own study by the collar. And the best moment of that night, which I did not witness and have had described to me 11 times. Zhao Mei was handed her own unconscious father to decorate. She considered the problem professionally. Then she drew her dagger, shaved off the beard he is famous for to make room, and painted him black eye rings and a fake stubble of dots. 4 grown women stared at her. What's wrong? No, it's nothing. In the morning, I walked into a room with 3 captains in it, wearing cartoon faces, one of them missing a beard. They had worked out that only the city lord's mansion could have done it. 3 important fortresses were breached easily, and every one of you was silenced. If the people last night had not been my guards but real enemies, none of you would be standing here. Then, you are all dead men. You have already died once. And the line that took the color out of them. Losing the 3 passes doesn't mean losing a wall. It means the enemy walks into your house, where your families are. All 3 went down on one knee. Punishments. 100 contribution points each, 300 per captain. A full lap of Zhuanmu City at a run, with the ink still on your faces. And third, from today onward, all of you will begin to learn to read. That one landed considerably worse than the other 2. The 22 remaining thieves came out onto Commercial Street. Originally, my intention was to execute all of you. Now I'm giving you a chance to atone. Stay and work 5 years, and you can leave. One of them tried to haggle. Lan Hua's voice went completely flat. You have no right to bargain. Either agree or die. Their job, shop managers and waiters. Using barbarians to handle barbarians, with my own people in every position that matters. Trial run was the sweet potato shop, where a roasted sweet potato bigger than 3 fists came out of the oven, and I immediately cut it into 4 portions at the same price. Because a customer who gets full stops spending, and I did not build a shop to feed people, a living sweet potato vine went into a barrel out front as the shop's sign because nobody in that world had ever seen a plant used as a logo. And 500 kilometers east of me, Tang Ruo arrived in Holy Sun City with 500 people and nowhere to put them. Nobody welcomed them. Nobody cared. Migrants fend for themselves. I had known that when I took her money and I had said nothing. She went shop to shop looking for work and got refused everywhere. By staff who didn't want a beautiful woman costing them their jobs, and by owners who offered her terms that had nothing to do with the work. In the end, her people built hide shanties in the slum outside the walls, and she refused to live inside the city without them. We're only living outside temporarily, she told them. When we become rich, everyone will move into the city. And then she looked at the ground for a while. That is what founding a power actually costs, and nobody puts it in the books. I know, because I write the books now. 3 days before we arrived in a rented room in Holy Sun City, the Thunder Spirit Beast egg started trembling. Chloe kept it in her shadow space, which she aired regularly, thank you. And the real reason she stole it finally came out, to Jingfei, at 2 in the morning. It bought her an excuse to come back this way. Otherwise, Oasis sends her somewhere much further away for years. Oasis vets a recruit for a full year before it lets them in. And being hunted across a wasteland at Chloe's side is Jingfei's test, which the girl has been passing without being told she was taking it. Then 3 orcs put the wall down, and a man in a gray fur robe with an X-shaped scar on one cheek was suddenly sitting on the roof opposite with his chin on his fist. Zhou Lei, the Stone Fist. One of the 3 great commanders of Holy Sun City. No fighting on his watch. The lion-headed orc played what he thought was his best card. We have a large salt trade with your Holy Sun City. No, that's the whole answer he got, which tells you 2 things. What a commander of that city thinks of merchants, and, much more usefully, that 10,000 Demon City is where Holy Sun City buys its salt. Chloe's read on why they survived that night was the vampire princess's name. 300 passes printed the night before, 1,000 by morning. The food shops on Commercial Street put real food in their windows. I hope, I said, to make a name for ourselves from the very first trade. And the first book went on the shelf. 30,000 words, a creation myth, a giant splitting heaven and earth apart and dying into mountains and rivers, written 2,000 or 3,000 words a night, out of a story I was told as a child, on a planet nobody in that world will ever hear of. Lan Hua read it straight through in one sitting, turned the last page, and demanded the rest. Is what you wrote inside true? It's all fake. It's all in my imagination. She looked at me for a moment too long before she accepted that. Holy Sun City saw us coming and ran for the walls. And on those walls stood the 3 great commanders. Zhou Lei, the Stone Fist, who manipulates and grows bone. Wraith Shadow, 1.60 meters, wrapped head to foot in bandages, rotting skin underneath, corpse poison, and the total captain of the assassination squads, which makes him Lunfin's master, and every one of my girls' childhood, and Darkmane Fiend Long Wei, whose hair reaches his heels, and who weaves it into a 10-meter, 9-tentacle octopus. Their last ancient savage beast was killed by Zhou Lei and fed that city for a year, so they spent the approach arguing over who got the kill, until the black dot resolved into a shape. I thought it would be the same size as the last one, but this one is 3 or 4 times bigger. Long Way opened with 4 hair whips, which is a genuinely frightening opening. They hit a wall of stone that came up out of the ground and cracked instead of breaking. Then, Joe Lay played his trump. Get up! 1,000 Bones Forest! 200 or 300 meters of 10-meter bone spears erupted out of the earth in front of 100,000 people. And then the ground split for hundreds of meters and folded over like the page of a book and buried the entire bone forest under itself. 3 7th-tier commanders stood on their own wall with nothing whatsoever to say to me, and a voice came down from the top of the beast. Guys, your welcome mode is really interesting. Then Lan Hua leaned over the battlements and added sweetly, We, Xuanwu City, have no ill intentions. It was not our intention to frighten you all. Woman, I thought, you are provoking them. Their assessment, which I did not hear at the time and would have enjoyed enormously, a mutated ancient savage beast, plus whoever is driving it, adds up to about 3 7th tiers on the other side. Fighting that wins you a ruin at best. So, talk. Which is exactly what I had walked a mountain across a wasteland to make them do. And they sent the youngest one because the other 2 looked at him and said nothing. With Holy Sun City's entire fighting strength massed on the wall, the interior of that city was half empty. So, Maylene and Serafina went in, right then, around the far side, on an invisible lizard. Be back before dark, I told them, or I'll come inside and look for you. Meanwhile, Joe Lay's delegation got walked through the complete visitor experience. The turtle lay down. Heavenly Gate Tower opened. Wu Chang issued passes stamped, preliminary review passed, and asked, without any expression at all, Have you brought enough beast crystals? At Hanging Pavilion, every weapon went into a numbered cabinet in exchange for a wooden token. Lan Fan refused. Zhou Lei overruled her in one sentence. If the other side is truly hostile, there's no need to ask us to hand over any weapons. Second stamp on the pass. At Shanghai Pass, Zhao Hu just waved them through, which after 2 searches is somehow the most unnerving part. It's almost harder, somebody muttered, than entering a holy land. Then they came out onto a clean street with elegant shop fronts and smells none of them could identify, and a living plant standing in a barrel outside a door. Lan Hua met them in front of a 4-story restaurant called the Gourmet Building and explained the rules. Pay in beast crystals or barter. Rare live animals fetch high prices. Upstairs, Zhou Lei met me and privately revised his estimate to 8th tier, because, in his words afterward, the man felt like the Holy Sun City Lord. Then I had lunch brought up, and it was 4 dishes, and every single one of them was vegetarian. No meat at all. Stir-fried sweet potato leaves, stir-fried cabbage, tomato soup, sweet potato fries. One of the 3 most powerful men in a city of 100,000 people eats green vegetables at a banquet a few times a year. He emptied every plate. Not one word of business was discussed, and somewhere around the 3rd dish, he worked out exactly what the menu had been saying to him. Then, I said, you're welcome to dine at the Gourmet Building often. At my sweet potato shop, he paid with a mid-grade crystal, thinking he was robbing us blind, and watched the clerk cut a head-sized sweet potato into 8 pieces and hand him 1/8. Then he ate it. Then he bought the other 7, then 2 whole ones, then every box of sweet potato chips in the shop. He told his escort to buy their own. And Lan Fen bought one for Ruo Han because she thought it might be the last good thing that woman would ever eat. The report he took back to his wall, a city on the beast's back, a lord who feels 8th tier, and an open invitation to trade. I could not have written it better myself, and I had in fact tried. Flying corpses ruling, lift the alert publicly, reinforce the gates quietly, and then he made his own subordinates hand over their sweet potatoes. All of them, including Lan Fen's. Long Wei curled his lip and walked away, because he does not associate with men who rob their own people. The lizard carried 2 invisible women over the rooftops of an emptied city, down into the dungeon under the city lord's mansion. Ruo Han was in the innermost cell of a prison I have still never seen, unhurt, and refusing to leave. They had to drag the reason out of her. Lan Fen's cell needed a real defector to hand over, and being handed over was the only way anybody was ever getting close enough to Flying Corpse to kill him. I will never allow you to sacrifice yourself, Serafina said, and it did nothing because Serafina has been saying that to her since they were 9. Maylene landed the one that worked. Do you really think a 5th-tier being can kill a 7th-tier being? Silence. Why did you choose a path where you can't control your own destiny? Why did you hand your life over to someone else so easily? And then the offer underneath it. With Angel's Wing, they have years now. Years to become strong enough to do it themselves. Don't you want to kill your enemy with your own hands? Of course I wanted to. 2 kicks took my problem's door off its hinges. Maylene's arrows and Seraphina's fists cleared the corridor so completely that Ruo Han walked out of that prison without lifting a hand, watching the girls she had spent 10 years shielding do the shielding. And on the way out, crossing the rooftops, Maylene looked down into a courtyard and stopped. Flying Corpse's house. Of course I can't go back empty-handed. Ruo Han stood there watching the single most cautious person she has ever known break into a great commander's home on an impulse. I take full responsibility for what I have done to that woman. They took, on my behalf and without asking me, a drawer full of high-grade beast crystals, every sheet of parchment in his study, unsorted because his secret medicine research and his White Walker research were somewhere in it, and a small wooden box, which turned out to contain a wire cage of live-winged insects, which she kept specifically as a present for me because I can evolve anything that flies. Over the wall, into the wilderness, circling back. Where are we going now? Somewhere, Maylene said, you could never even dream of. Ruo Han came out of a cell into open air and found my mountain standing outside Holy Sun City, which had not been there when she went in. Is that an ancient savage beast? She spent a while working out how long she'd been down there. Then streets, houses, a tree, and a patrol. Malin flicked something out of the air at Zhao Hu, an identity tag cut from ice nether serpent scale, cold to the touch, with Ghost on one face and Zhuan Wu on the other. He looked at it once and stood his men down. Some things shouldn't be said carelessly. Ruo Han spent the entire walk in a daze while her two juniors cheerfully briefed her on the local housing market. The box held bees. Black bees. Bees in a world that has apparently lost its bees along with its flowers, and where nobody at that table recognized the word. Tamed and pushed to level 5 for 11,000 points. Sky King Bee. 2 meters, gold with black bands. A stinger like a spear. And one flap of its wings blew every sheet of paper in my study off the desk and into the corridor. 2 consequences, and the second one changed everything. The first, it breeds like my beetle in a pyramid. 10 level 4 workers, 100 level 3, 1,000 level 2, 10,000 level 1. More mouths than my city has flowers, which meant I needed fields of flowering plants before it laid a single egg, and which meant, one day, an air force. The second, the talent. Queen Bee pact, a binding contract. At level 5, 5 contracts, each up to 50 years, each carrying up to 5 restrictions, and the longer the term, the lighter the restrictions bite. That is the thing that let me hire strangers into key positions, and then sleep at night. That is why I could afford to take in 500 people I had never met. Flying Corpse came home carrying a bag of sweet potatoes he had confiscated from his own people and found his study emptied by mine. His research parchment, gone. And the insects he was breeding for poison stock, gone with it. Lan Fen heard the roar from her own courtyard and decided not to go and look. I'd have made the same call. Her cell had done its arithmetic that morning, and I want you to hear what these people considered a plan. One of their members had 35 days before she turned into a void ghost. So, Lan Fen volunteered to be the fake defector instead. Defect at 15 days. Be captured at 5. Be executed just before the change. Her one request, which I did not learn about until much later, and which I have thought about a great deal since. Let's go to Zhuanwu City tomorrow. I want to buy some roasted sweet potatoes. Then she cried into her captain's shoulder without making any noise at all. Lan Fen has 1 year. That night Ruo Han walked into her room and told her that Angel's Wing is real. They took her up the cliff on the invisible lizard, past a 16-meter tree burning with green stars and small yellow lights drifting through the branches. Such light, she said, must be incredibly beautiful. And then into the back garden, where a single stem carried 5 angels' wings instead of 1. The angel's tears formed from this are many times more potent. A single drop can hold it for a year and a half. Is there no way to completely cure it? Li Ming is already researching it. That's enough. She was looking at the flowers. It's good enough that it can be contained. Maylene had stated her own terms to Ruo Han beforehand, flatly. I'll get them the tears if you get them to join. Seraphina watched all of it and thought, this is recruitment with bait on it. She was right. I've never pretended otherwise. In the stolen parchment, Li Ming found something. Mutation secret medicine. A medicine that grants mutant abilities. Incomplete. With the core ingredients deliberately omitted. It's okay, she said, delighted. We can experiment ourselves. And then her new idea, which she delivered while eating. If the infection can't be cured, keep part of its power and convert the rest into a mutation. Then I sent for Tang Ruo, who had spent 4 days in a hide shanty being turned down for work, and gave her one sentence. I have something to ask of you. If you can do it well, I can consider having you join Zhuanwu City. All of us? There's enough room for 1,000 people. The shell was 1,000,000 square meters by then, roughly 4 stadiums. She took the sealed plan out of my hand and held it like a rope somebody had thrown her. Lan Fen came to me veiled, sat on the very edge of my chair, and asked me 3 questions. What work? Intelligence, surveillance, assassination. All of you into Ghost Special Forces, which will also become the guard of my highlands. How many of us can you take? Which was not a question about numbers. It was a question about how many faces like hers I could stomach. We can have as many people as we want. And then, because it was true, actually, I don't think what's on your faces is ugly. On the contrary, it adds to your charm. Lan Hua's teacup broke in her hand. I have never once been allowed to forget that sentence. 3rd question. The veil didn't move. Can you survive Holy Sun City coming for us? So, I let it off the leash. The air in that study went thick. The books slid across the desk with no wind touching them, and a 5th-tier assassin had to hold the arm of the chair to stay upright. As long as you join Zhuanwu City, no one in that city will dare to touch you. That was the sentence she had walked up a 500-meter cliff to hear. Leave the obstruction and the attacks from Holy Sun City to me. Dawn at the gates of Holy Sun City, with thousands of people queuing to get out of it and up to me. In that crowd, a hunting captain in a false beard was loudly explaining things to anyone who'd listen, while a well-dressed stranger fed him exactly the right questions. Guo Qiang and Tong Ruo running the oldest routine in commerce. Star tea that lengthens your life. A giant glowing tree. Books recording the secrets of ancient times. Seedlings. Mature green vegetables. And they've done this before, at 10-floor city. And everyone there who hesitated got nothing. Then her retainers, planted through the crowd, announced loudly that they were going home to fetch their beast crystals. And the herd went with them. Also in that crowd, listening. Chloe and Jingfei. Because every intelligence broker in Holy Sun City had dropped Chloe's job to chase the Zhuanwu City story instead. Jingfei wanted to go up for the food. Chloe refused because of the orcs. So, the vampire princess found the one lever in the world that would move her. Zhuanwu City conducts transactions in every major city it visits. Who knows? Maybe they have information about your sister. Chloe turned around and went to fetch beast crystals. Her sister was 1 stair flight away, and she did not know it. The gates opened, and Tang Ro's hundreds went into my queue first, deliberately so the herd would follow. Then, my filter bit. A pass costs 1 elementary intermediate beast crystal, payable before you set foot in the city. Half the queue left swearing at me. That is precisely the design. Anyone who can't spend 1 crystal has no business on Commercial Street. And I would rather have 400 customers than 4,000 tourists. My second rule, no hoods, no covered faces, which locked the 3 orcs out entirely because they cannot be seen. My third, weapons into numbered cabinets. And when one group refused, a 4-meter ghost-faced spider came in through the window and cocooned all of them, and the argument concluded. Please do not act rashly, otherwise you will attract the attention of the city's guardian spirit beasts. At the gate, we also sold a palm-sized illustrated guide to Commercial Street. Woodblock pictures, 1 line of text per shop, 1 crystal. It sold out and I had to reprint it 3 times, mostly to intelligence hunters who resold my guidebook inside Holy Sun City at a markup, which is free advertising that I got paid for, and I would like some credit for that. Jingfei bought 1 for the drawings, which is the single most flattering review my publishing house has ever received. Chloe tore a corner off it and chewed it, and went completely still, because my paper is made from plants, and it tasted like the grassroots she'd eaten in Oasis. Here, at last, is what Oasis actually is. It is an organization that has spent its entire existence trying to grow plants at scale and bring the dead forests back. And she was standing in my city, which sells seedlings by the 100 and prints its books on plant fiber. Vampire lore, which I got out of her later over a bowl of soup. Night Moon City's elite drink blood every day until they can't taste anything else. She has never drunk it, which is why she can still enjoy food, and why she is the only person in her family who thinks the outside world is worth seeing. They stayed at my hotel, Samsung Tower, run from the front desk by the Veil Weaver, who was bored out of her mind and whom I had personally sentenced to that desk. 10 intermediate superior crystals a night for the best room. 10 elementary intermediate for the worst. And 10 more if you want the bath hot. 2 women who sleep in rock crevices got, from me, for money. A wooden floor, a soft mattress, a heavy clean quilt, free drinking water in a ceramic bottle, and a toilet that flushes with water. Jingfei sat on the edge of that bed and finally understood what I was charging for. Outside, my Commercial Street stayed lit after dark because I had put lantern beetles in silk cages on top of 3-meter poles, and at the bottom of my cliff, the 3 orcs camped in the dirt and watched several Holy Sun City thieves get swatted off the rock face by something they couldn't see. That invisible spirit beast is at least 5th rank. Let's just wait patiently. My day 1 takings. Every cabbage and tomato seedling sold out. mostly to Holy Sun, city's own city lord's mansion, and its great families. 3,000 caddies of roasted sweet potato, all the chips, 300 green vegetable set meals at the gourmet building, and the brochure, 3 print runs. Strategy set, stay about 10 days, then move on. Because by then, the story runs ahead of us to the next city, and arriving somewhere they've already heard of you is worth more than another week of takings. I kept the book in the back. Good things can't be released all at once. And Lan Hua named the next destination, having clearly been turning it over for a while. Flying Bird City. Catch a bird. Evolve it into a giant one. And use giant birds to ferry customers in from other cities, so that Commercial Street is never empty. Nobody I employed knew where Flying Bird City was, so I'd buy the location. That night, Flying Corp sent his first squad up my cliff. 10 years together, 100% mission record, 6 elites, a tracker, a danger sense, a detector, and a woman called Jingyi, whose power is invisibility. They evaded my silk lines. They held perfectly still and vanished while my lizard walked past within a few meters of them. And they reached the wall, where a man was standing on the battlements looking down at them. "Hey, good evening." The captain came up at me with a hand hardened to iron, 6th tier, and I caught it barehanded on a circuit of tricolored scale, sparks coming off my palm, and bent the arm until it broke and then put it into his own chest. Goodbye. 3 more went into a floating sphere of water with silk waiting inside it, and discovered they could not swim out of a vortex. I walked down the vertical wall at a right angle to it, tapped the detector on the forehead with one finger, and froze him into a statue, and the statue dropped into the sphere and turned the whole thing into a ball of ice. Then I turned my head and looked directly at the empty air where the last one was standing. So it turns out it has the ability to become invisible, and to detect things. Then I turned around and walked away, and the wall rippled and swallowed her into a stone coffin, 2 6th tier and 4 5th tier, under 30 seconds, and I want to be honest, I was playing. My actual takeaway, standing on that wall afterward, the hole in my defenses is real. An invisible woman got to my battlements, tame more animals. The next morning, Chloe and Jingfei woke up in the softest bed either of them had slept in for a year and went to eat. A plate of stir-fried cabbage costs 10 intermediate superior crystals. They ordered it anyway, then a meat patty, then another one, then another one, and walked out with a dozen empty plates behind them and no money at all. We've overspent. What do we do now? Sleeping on the streets is fine too. They couldn't leave. The orcs were camped at the bottom of the stairs, and walking back down my lit street, Lan Xing, who had seen the portrait on my desk a dozen times, spotted a girl under the Wang City wall and could not shake the feeling that she knew her face. Chloe felt the stare, pulled her shadow up over her own features, and turned away, about 90 meters below the room where her sister was asleep in my house. "Strange," Feyen said to nobody. "She looks somewhat familiar." Missed again, by 1 second and 1 shadow. Tang Ro did the hardest thing anyone did for me that month, and did it without being asked. She gathered her retainers and cut the cord herself. "After today, I will no longer be your young lord. From now on, you will be loyal to the lord of Zhuanmu City." And then the hardest sentence in it, which she made herself say last. "And you will not allow cliques or factions." Her men were folded into the city defense army, and I asked her what she actually liked doing. She had to think about it for a long time. Nobody had ever asked her before, including me, until that afternoon. Reading and writing. So she got the printing operation and the bookshop on Commercial Street, a trade that did not exist anywhere in that world 1 month earlier. Lan Hua brought the day's takings up to my room that night and dried my wet hair with her water ability, having offered before, remembering that I can do that myself, and somehow ended up massaging my temples. I took her hand and moved it to my cheek. Xiaolian's voice came through the door, and she was gone before I'd finished turning my head. The bag converted to 1,228,600 evolution points. From 1 day of shopkeeping. 10 days should be this 4 or 5 million. I spent 1 million of it on the shining beetle, 4 to 7. Light element manipulation, 2 meters, solid gold, bright enough to light a room by its shell alone, and on my desk every single night, worked at a little at a time with a knife, was a woodblock, my own woodblock, a portrait of a woman with cat ears, because a woodblock can be printed in every city we visit, forever. Tang Ruo's 500 came up through the checkpoints, expecting the worst, and got processed by family, name, members, ages, and then a flat, allocated by household size and strength. Guo Qiang, 5th tier, wife, 7-year-old daughter, got 3 bedrooms. What? They're allocating houses too? Nobody in that world had ever heard of it. Nobody had a word for it. I explained my own idea twice, and I still don't think the second one landed. His daughter ran through my empty rooms shrieking. He stood in my doorway and felt, for the first time in his adult life, like he belonged to a place instead of working for one. Then Lan Hua taught Tang Ruo about my money. Contribution points as a printed stamped slip. 100 advanced against salary, overwritten with an invalid stamp, and reissued with a new balance, and every transaction logged for audit. Prices. A basic furniture package, 72 points. The deluxe one, 550. Fresh meat, 3 points a pound, out of an ice locker. And a decoration workshop that will design your rooms for you. Tang Ruo bought a table, chairs, meat, and a pot, and was nearly broke by lunchtime. At which point, Lan Hua suggested sweetly that she could always come and report on her work over dinner at the city lord's mansion, and walked off, leaving her standing in an empty flat working out that she had just been taught how to freeload. I went hunting for flowers because I had a bee empire coming and nothing to feed it. The sleeping flower became the mist flower at level 5. 6 meters tall, a 2-meter black lotus with 30 petals, talent, sleepy pollen. Its passive alone dropped Shaolin mid-sentence into my arms. At full power, it would put down anything below 5th tier. Evolved further, it could put an entire city to sleep, which is a thought I have deliberately not pursued. Li Ming stood in the middle of that pollen cloud, completely unaffected, and finally told us why. She is immune to all poisons, and poison makes her stronger, which explains why she drinks her own experiments, and possibly explains everything else about her. Then the anesthesia flower became the thousand-thorn flower, a 25-meter vine as thick as a leg, with half-meter thorns that will paralyze a 5th tier with a single prick, and flowers along its entire length. I ripped it out of the ground, made it weightless, whipped it into the sky on silk, jumped after it, and planted it along the one cliff face I couldn't cover, a living wall that also feeds the bees. Then I made a policeman. Guo Qiang, broke in buying food on credit, got summoned and made the first sheriff of a thing that had never existed there, the patrol guard, an internal police force for outer city, separate from the army, handling security, disputes, and fights. And then I handed him a booklet, Zhuanwu City Laws and Regulations. First edition. Deliberate murder, death, theft, labor, scaled to the value taken, brawling, compensation by fault and by injury, plus a term. And it went down to a level of detail that World found genuinely insane, like owing a man compensation for a knocked-out tooth. Lord City Lord, are we really going to follow the treaty? Of course, this law must be followed within Zhuanwu City. I didn't explain my reasoning to him. It's this. My city is good now. Hearts don't survive time. Write the floor down while you still want to. One condition on the job. Once you've memorized this entire booklet, you can start setting up the patrol guard. Memorize the whole thing? Yes, everyone who joins has to. Tang Ruo spent 2 days learning papermaking and printing from nothing, and shelved 30 books she did not want to sell to anybody. Also delivered that week, the first printed textbooks, a language primer, and a maths book. Because my city was full of 6 and 7-year-olds, and I intended to open a school for every one of them, and the woodblock I had been carving a little at a time, every night, of the woman with the cat ears, was finished. Print it, I told her. Hand it out tomorrow. That same night, out of money and sleeping in my shop doorways, Chloe and Jingfei went up into my outer city to answer the one question Oasis exists to answer. How does this city grow plants? On the way, they burgled a house for half a roasted dinner. It was Zhao Hu's. He has never let it go. Ruo Han and Serafina shadowed them the entire way to find out what they were after, and struck when they turned for my highlands. Chloe got as far as digging up a tree root, and found a root system healthier than anything Oasis had grown in its entire existence. Then the fight. Shadow tendrils against 2 invisible 5th tiers, ending in her ultimate, dozens of shadow spears coming out of the ground at once. The ghost armor ate it. That move cost her 90% of her power, including the shadow space she keeps her belongings in, which meant everything she owned spilled out onto the ground in front of her. Jingfei got a grip on her and hauled her into the air, and with the last shred of shadow she had left, Chloe reached back and took exactly 2 things, a child's drawing and a carved stone. She could lose anything. She could lose the egg she had been hunted across a continent for, the same egg that was, by then, in my pocket. She was not losing her sister's paintings. I arrived about a minute after they had gone, and picked a large round object out of the scattered junk on the ground. Is this an egg? And put it in my pocket. In the morning, Tang Ruo collected 150 printed copies of the portrait, glanced at the top one, and stopped walking. She had met this woman, on Commercial Street, the previous day. She ran it to the mansion, where Lan Xing looked at it and said she'd seen her too, in the street, at night. And then Ruo Han and Serafina looked at it and went white at exactly the same moment. She is one of the 2 people who broke into my highlands last night. Shaolin came out of her chair hard enough to knock the table into the wall. My sister broke into the city lord's mansion last night? This fate, as somebody said into the silence afterward, is unparalleled. She begged to go and look herself. It's more efficient, I said, to leave professional matters to professionals. Then I gave Ruohan and Serafina the only order I gave that week: find her and bring her back safely. The bookstore opened that morning too, and in walked a plainly dressed woman of about 40, with an enormous hide pack on her back, and a 10-year-old daughter in pigtails. The girl couldn't speak. She talked to her mother in a private sign language the two of them had built themselves. The mother was called Briar, and she is the legendary bard hunter known across every great city as the Whisper Gale, whose face nobody has seen, whose name nobody knows, and whose sex is a matter of active dispute among people who trade in facts. 6th tier. She read 2 pages of my book standing at the counter and could not stop. She asked whether it was true. She asked who Wei Feng was, and assumed he must be an old man of 50 or 60. And she paid 100 intermediate superior crystals for a book, thinking it was absurdly cheap, until she found out that the other copies are identical, and understood exactly what she was looking at. Lan Hua had been sitting behind that counter the entire time, as deterrence in a dress, and had also been unable to put her own copy down. Meanwhile, the 2 orcs, who were still camped at the bottom of my stairs and still could not get up them, went into Holy Sun City hungry and started kicking doors down for food, and ended up sharing half a roasted sweet potato, with a bite already taken out of it, and then a scrap of jerky, because the house they picked was poor. Then the wolf caught a scent. Chloe and Jingfei, both burned out, hiding in an empty room in the city, while the orcs had spent 2 days watching the wrong gate. They cornered them, and 2 invisible women dropped in on top of it. Get lost. And Jingfei, thinking fast and getting it catastrophically wrong, shouted, "They're from Zhuanwu City. They're the ones who took the Thunder Spirit Beast egg," which handed 10,000 Demon City a grudge against my city on a plate for free. Once something goes into our city lord's pocket, there's no way it'll come back. In the confusion, the 2 women my people were sent to find escaped again, and everyone scattered when something very large started roaring down the street. That night, about 200 meters below my study window, Chloe went to collect the intelligence she'd paid a deposit on. The broker demanded the balance. She had nothing. So she took him by the throat, and Jingfei showed him her fangs, and he folded instantly. "Your sister should be in Zhuanwu City." "Evidence?" He pulled a sheet of paper out of a drawer, one of the 150 printed portraits already circulating through Holy Sun City by lunchtime, and held it up next to her face. "Look, isn't that you in the portrait?" It was unmistakably her, at a younger age, because I had drawn it off her sister's description in a stone house on a turtle, which meant someone who knew her well had drawn it, which meant Shaolin was in Zhuanwu City, and possibly a prisoner. Jingfei called it a trap. Chloe didn't care. She handed the blonde girl a piece of hide with an address written on it. "Oasis has a contact point in Flying Bird City," and gave her one instruction: "If I fail, go there and beg them for help." Then she bowed to her, which so appalled Jingfei that she jumped backwards off the wall, and by the time she'd got her balance back, Chloe was gone. She wandered Holy Sun City hunting for anybody from Zhuanwu City to take her up, and got found instead. "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for you." She held the portrait up. "Weren't you looking for me? Is my sister in your hands?" "She's fine. You can see her when you come back with me." Up the cliff on an invisible lizard she could feel under her and could not see. Into the palace, into the study, and the door banged open behind her. "Sister!" Shaolin crossed that room, like something fired out of a tube, and put her face into Chloe's chest and cried 4 years out of her system. "You've grown up." And then, once everyone had recovered, Chloe gravely unrolled a sheet of paper she had carried across a continent and explained to the room that it depicts her little sister being kidnapped by a man riding an 8-horned fang beast. "Sis," I clearly drew a ferocious turtle. "It is indeed a turtle," I said, enjoying myself more than I have possibly ever enjoyed anything. Chloe sat down and began quietly questioning the last 4 years of her own life, and then her stomach growled into the silence. My stomach isn't feeling well." Shaolin cooked for her sister herself, and stood over her while she ate. Chloe met Starshine Tea and made a noise I would describe as undignified, then learned it comes from the tree outside the window, then learned what it does, and then ate like a woman who could swallow a beast whole because she had been running on jerky for a month. That night, in the bath, Shaolin told her older sister gently that she stank, which is the exact line she got from me on day 6, delivered with the exact same face. They talked until they fell asleep in the same bed. My morning briefing was about Flying Bird City. I had never heard of it 2 days earlier. It sits on a solitary peak inside Wanku Forest, a forest of lone stone peaks scattered with dead bones, which is where the name comes from, and the beasts in there run to 7th tier, and by legend to 8th. Chloe deliberately overstated all of that, to keep her sister out of it. "Yes," I said. "I want to go. 8th tier, beast crystals." And Chloe sat at my table with a thing she did not say out loud. Oasis has a contact point in Flying Bird City, and if Oasis learns what grows on this shell, they will come for it. She was now standing exactly between the organization that saved her life and the city that took in her sister. She decided to keep watching. 30 copies of that book sold out in under half a day. 3,000 low-grade superior crystals. 3 million evolution points in one day from a story. So, I immediately throttled the print run because books are luxury goods, the buyers are great families, and, as I said to a horrified Tang Ruo, piracy will appear sooner or later and cannot be avoided. Every rich house that bought a copy already had someone hand copying it that night. 10 million buys my turtle level 8. I started counting. Then there was panic at the bottom of the stairs because a wolf pack was coming, and the thing at the front of it was 5 meters long and 3 tall and snow white and glowing, and I knew exactly who it was before I saw its face. It stopped dead at my turtle's foot and sat down and waited. I dropped 500 meters and it shoved its head into my hands. So you do know how to come back. Have you already taken your revenge? It nodded, like a person. Then it turned around and roared once. And 30 adult moonwolves and 8 cubs went flat on the ground in the dirt, in front of a crowd from Holy Sun City, and saluted a man as their new wolf king. Zhou Lei, watching from the wall, decided to stay and enjoy the show. The turtle lowered its tail to the ground as a ramp, and the pack walked up it into a territory of their own, with permission to hunt outside and strict orders not to frighten outer city. Then I swung up onto the wolf king's back and rode it up the ramp. The army had cavalry. Jingfei, meanwhile, had gone a day and a night with no word, and had spent that time constructing increasingly detailed scenarios in which Chloe had been sold into a labor gang. So, she came out of the night sky in a dive onto my highlands, and a voice came out of the dark below her. Why come from the air when there's a main entrance? Silk shut her wings, then her mouth, and I carried her into the dining room on a thread and set her down on the floor as a guest, where Chloe was sitting at the table with a mouthful of roast meat. The meat fell out of her hand. "You stinky cat girl! What is going on?" She was untied, seated, and served tomato soup. She announced she was far too angry to eat. Her stomach immediately called her a liar. I docked Ruohan and Serafina 2 days contribution points and 3 unpaid night shifts for letting an air infiltration through my roof. They both told me that was outrageously lenient. Then Chloe asked the only question she had come for. Come away with me. And Shaolin, who had crossed a wasteland looking for this woman, who had drawn her face onto a board so a stranger could paint it, who had left a stone on a shed floor for 4 years, looked at the table and said no. Her stated reasons? It's safe. There's food. There's endless water. Her real one was standing 1 room away. Jingfei spotted it in about 4 seconds. You must have someone you like in Zhuanwu City. And Chloe, who has walked the whole world and seen exactly what it does to 14-year-old girls, went quiet. Because 2 days of looking around had already told her that her sister was safer here than anywhere on Earth she could take her. So, she agreed to travel with us as far as Flying Bird City, which was on her road back anyway, and quietly planned to try again at the end of it. Then Jingfei remembered the small matter of the egg. I'm not taking it back, Chloe said. Her reasoning? Wei Feng pulled Shaolin out of that camp before the bandits came. Her sister is alive because of him. 1 thunder spirit beast egg offsets a life-saving favor. Jingfei's warning stood though. Keep that egg, and 10,000 Demon City comes knocking. Maylin was listening outside the door, and she took that name away with her. Li Ming kicked my study door open with her hair going in 4 directions. She had taken 1 drop of angel's tears, plus 3 main herbs and 5 auxiliary ones, all of them common, all of them growing in my own garden, and turned it into 5 doses of healing secret medicine at 70% strength. 1 drop that saved 1 person now saves 5. 100 doses a day was possible immediately, limited only by the tiers and the size of the herb beds. I saw what that was before she'd finished the sentence. A hospital. A dose in every soldier's kit. A strategic resource that no city on that continent can buy at any price. And a pharmacy workshop, staffed exclusively by people bound with the Queen Bee Pact. Then I told her to go to sleep, because staying up like that will make the people who care about you sad. She asked whether I'd be sad if she got sick, and then ran out of the room scarlet before I could answer. 3 nights later, I was standing in a field in the dark when 25 people came up out of a secret passage under Holy Sun City. Everyone Lan Fen could persuade, including Li Nia, who was 14 years old and had the crimson lines on her cheek, and Wraith Shadow was standing at the mouth of that tunnel because somebody had told him. His offer was generous by his standards. Become White Walkers. Never feel pain again. Never feel death, or hunger, or cold. Without humanity, Lan Fen said, what's the difference between them and void ghosts? And then, so you can kill our parents? And he answered as though she'd asked about the weather. Oh, for Holy Sun City, All of this can be sacrificed. Her kick landed on his forearm and came back with her ankle eaten through by corpse poison, and I was still 40 meters away. 25 second and third tier kids lit up the crimson lines on their own faces and got ready to die in a tunnel mouth, and I was close enough by then to hear them do it. "The light of fireflies," he said, and a voice above him said, "Heh heh. Are you praising yourself as the bright moon?" "They have already pledged allegiance to me," I said, "so they are now people of Zhuanwu City. Is this blatant robbery?" "Right?" He came in at me with rotting claws behind a wall of corpse poison. I sealed myself behind hardened scale, laced him in living silk, condensed a sphere of water around him, and touched it. The water froze solid, the silk snapped, and the ball dropped and shattered on the ground. And the 7th tier total captain of Holy Sun City's assassination squads shattered with it. Done. I clapped the frost off my hands. 25 people who had spent their entire lives inside that man's shadow stood in a tunnel mouth in the dark and, after a very long moment, started crying in the street. My own private note at the time was, "This is going to cost a fortune in angels' tears." Then the Holy Sun City Lord arrived, 70-odd years old, 8th tier, lava. And genuinely, for about 90 seconds, the most fun I had all year, and he opened by reaching for my face. That was the first time in that world I got to use the whole toolbox on somebody my own size. Hardened scale against a fist of molten rock, a bird made of ice that cooled lava into stone in midair, a giant hand of earth and mud, and then 20 times gravity, which sank several hundred meters of ground into a crater and rolled the earth at him in waves like surf, and finally a sphere of water frozen around him. "Is this ever going to end?" he said from inside it. He called the halt himself. "You made the first move," I pointed out. And then he paid for the ceasefire and information, and the shape of the world changed in about 4 minutes. First, the blood moon, void ghost tide. Every 60 years the moon turns blood red, and every void ghost sleeping underground wakes up at the same moment. Anything without a high-tier protector is slaughtered. I did the arithmetic on my own city while he was still talking. The next one is less than a year away. Second, the Holy Land, an ancient organization that holds an annual conference open to every 8th tier power on the continent. It investigates why every plant on the surface died, what the void ghosts actually are, why the blood moon comes, and it allocates territory between the great cities, which means it had never once allocated any to me. I was invited. He handed me the location on a hide map. I asked what the actual benefits were, and then demanded 200,000 or 300,000 beast crystals with a completely straight face, which I believe damaged his opinion of me permanently. Third, the White Walkers were built to fight the ghost tide, and their creator handed me every single one of Flying Corpse's surviving people without hesitating because, his words, "They're no longer of any use to me." "So you're going to capture innocent people to infect them?" "Some people always have to be sacrificed." "Nonsense." And fourth, asked on my way out, because I never stop working. The salt mine is in 10,000 Demon City, and every city in that entire region buys its salt from them. The defectors came up the lit stairs onto Commercial Street at midnight, and Li Na told the story in 3 sentences. Flying Corpse was frozen into a ball, and shattered. Ruo Han, Serafina, and Li Ming stood perfectly still, and then the crying started, on a shopping street, at midnight. From women who had spent a decade planning a revenge that had just been taken away from them by somebody else in about 6 seconds. Maylin's helmet stayed on. I could hear it anyway. And Lan Hua, who spent 15 years as a water-producing tool for people who calculated her rationing while she bled, told me it was the wind. There was no wind. She got caught. She did not appreciate it. Lan Fen's ankle, which had been eaten to the bone by corpse poison, was cured on the spot by Li Ming's new medicine. It turns out it works on that too. Then I came back, tugged Shaolin's ears, and handed them all the next reason to get stronger. The White Walker program was almost certainly the City Lord's own. As for whether he personally ordered a batch of orphans to be used as test subjects, that isn't clear. What is clear is that he gave them away like furniture to a stranger in the middle of a road. The room went white hot. I want to become stronger so I can come back and give him a good beating. And Ruo Han, with both hands on her sword. "Wait until we're strong enough. We would like to apply to return to Holy Sun City." "Of course." And then the anticlimax that landed harder than any of it. Each of the 25 got their own flat on the 2nd tier of my highlands, 1 room per person. Table, chairs, bed, cooking pot, all of it prepared over the previous 3 days before I knew whether any of them would survive the tunnel, plus 100 contribution points a month. Really? 1 room per person? And on the walk over, under the streetlights. That's a lantern beetle. It's in charge of street lighting. Then I took 25 people who had never in their lives been full into a canteen I'd built in 3 days. Lan Hua read my prices out. 1 contribution point at the ordinary counter, and you eat as much as you like. 2 points for a plate of cooked green vegetables. The exchange charges 10 for a raw serving, and breakfast is free. Lan Fen had arrived planning to eat once a day to make my points last. She walked down that counter saying, "Want? Stewed meat, fried patties, meat soup, meatballs," and then stood in front of the vegetables having a genuine crisis, and then paid 3 points for the entire tray. And watched the clerk stamp her slip from 100 down to 97. Then every single one of her 24 people came over and put a share of their vegetables on her tray, because all of them had bought one, to give to her. She kept her face down over the tray so that nobody could see her eyes, and I went and stood somewhere else, and Lan Hua quietly collected her daughter and left them the room. And the sentence that broke more of them than anything else that night: "You can take a shower every day from now on, and the water is free. Angel's wing, 5 to 7, 1,100,000 points." The main flower grew to 3.5 pairs of wings, and 2 more buds opened, 7 flowers on 1 stem, and a drop now forms every 3 days instead of 10. 262, 248, 235, 269 spirit. Lifespan, 4,890 years. 3.5 million points banked against the 10 million that buys level 8. I fed a drop straight off my fingertip to Maylene. The crimson lines flared, and then faded back further than they ever had. It is still not a cure. I want to be honest about that, because she was, again, immediately out loud. But 1 drop now holds it for 6 years instead of 18 months. "It won't take 6 years, I told her. "I guarantee your void ghost infection will be cured within 1. She stood on tiptoe and hugged me, and ran away before I could react, which is now simply how that works. I wrote the departure notice myself and had it posted at Heavenly Gate Tower and all over Holy Sun City. Yuanwu City leaves at dawn. Next stop, Flying Bird City. Naming the destination is deliberate. It keeps the customers. Holy Sun City emptied itself into the queue for one last spree. Joe Lay brought his daughter and booked 4 ovens of sweet potatoes. The Veil Weaver warned her guests that staying the night meant sailing with the city. Anne Breyer, the Whisper Gale, the most famous anonymous person on the continent, decided to stay aboard and see Flying Bird City again. At dawn, my turtle stood up. The ground heaved. Heavenly Gate Tower rose into the air. And a mountain walked south in strides you could measure in dozens of meters, while 100,000 people stood on their walls and watched it go. Long Wei announced he was glad to see the back of me, and was immediately exposed for having sent an aide to queue for his sweet potatoes. Joe Lay said, mostly to himself, "I don't know when we'll see each other again. I hope the seedlings I bought will survive." And behind all of them, the Holy Sun City Lord sent 6 White Walkers out to shadow us at a distance. "I hope we meet again," he said, "in the Holy Land." So, 2 months ago, I woke up on a plank bed in a shed with more gaps than wall, as contraband, kept alive by a 14-year-old who was 30 lizards short on a tax she was paying for me. I now own a walking mountain with a city on its back. There's a wall on it, and my flag over the wall, and a tree you can see from the horizon. There's a canteen where breakfast is free, and a school with printed textbooks, and a law with a first edition, and a bank of contribution points, and a hospital's worth of medicine growing on 1 stem in my garden. And in my city, every single morning, water comes out of the tap, and nobody pays me for it. I'd call that a good 2 months of my life. Here's the part that keeps me up. 3 orcs turned for home that morning to go and beg a marquis of 10,000 Demon City for help, because their Beast King wants the egg in my pocket, and because the prize they lost chasing it was a ritual with a 90% chance of making them stronger than they have ever been. The Holy Sun City Lord put 6 White Walkers on my trail and called it an invitation. And somewhere out there, a woman with cat ears is riding toward Flying Bird City with an organization behind her that has spent its entire existence trying to bring the forests back, and which is about to find out that a stranger on a turtle can grow a 32-meter tree. I spent 2 months trying very hard not to be noticed by anybody. I have been noticed by everybody, and I find I don't mind it as much as I should.